Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Saturday, the 2nd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with me, Anne, and Paul Hawkins.
We are live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here's what you're waking up to this Saturday morning.
Well, Chris Pincher has been suspended now as a Tory MP following allegations of groping at a private members' club. The now independent MP is under investigation by Parliament's behaviour watchdog. But what fallout could this have for the government?
Also this morning, COVID infections in the UK have jumped by 32% in a week. 2.3 million infections were reported in 1 week in the middle of June. That represents one of the highest leaps on record. We'll be finding out what the cause is behind this increase.
And education bosses have called for a crackdown on so-called Mickey Mouse university courses. Some student groups have called for more data on how many graduates actually get a good job after taking these courses. Have you got one of these degrees?
Yeah, do let us know. As ever, you can join in any of our conversations this morning. We do love hearing from you. You can drop us a line, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
There are lots of other things to talk about as well. Bees. If you've ever had a bee problem, and you have, haven't you?
Yes, we had a problem with bees in the garden. They'd taken over a kind of rat's nest that had been there a few years ago.
What a charming garden you have.
What a wonderful garden. No, but we were doing work to it and we found, we moved a shed. We took a shed away and then underneath, these bees had moved in and they were living in the ground. And so...
What were you able to do about it?
You can move it, and a few times I've tried to, but I'll be honest, I got a little bit scared about moving it myself.
Did they eventually go?
Last time I looked, they hadn't, no.
Oh, because that's a bit of a problem. See, Pete Price, who'll be in a bit later on reviewing the newspapers with us, he was telling us last week about a bee problem he's got because, a queen bee must have just got in under the roof, above the bedroom window, and obviously then the entire hive followed her and they've just set up home on his top window. And there's nothing you can do about it unless you arrange to have them moved. The council won't do it, they won't touch it, so you have to go to a sort of private bee mover. Or beekeeper, or somebody who knows what they're doing. And that's going to cost at least £1,000, he was being warned.
Yeah, it does cost quite a lot. Bees have got rights.
Yes, bees have rights, and quite right that they have rights. But if they decide to take up residence in your house or in your garden, there's very little you can do about it unless you get a professional in, and that can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
So if you've got a bee problem, or if you ever had a bee or a wasp problem, and we have had some horrible wasps' nests in our attic from time to time, but again, we had to get a man in to do it, or smoke them down, put a great big thing around it and then move it. What a palaver. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear your bee stories, please. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, and we're also going to be talking about army recruitment. Joining the army, why should you do it? We're going to be talking about that later this morning. Because the army have got a special recruitment video out, which we can have a quick look at now.
Oh, yes, it's really good.
What does the army of the future look like? It looks like you.
Technology will help us do incredible things, but nothing can do what a soldier can do.
Good, isn't it? It's great. The army of the future still needs you.
Might have drawn inspiration from a certain film.
Yeah, I wonder which. Yeah. But it's fascinating because the talk has for years been so much that the army can be pared down and we can make cuts with soldiers because it's going to be all cyber warfare and it's going to be all high tech. And yet clearly the army themselves feel that they still need soldiers, as they said there.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite tally with the fact that they are making cuts.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a
The politicians are making cuts. The army wants more recruitment, so we'll be talking about that too.
Yeah, and if you served in the army, do let us know about your experiences.
Yeah,
Of
if you're
course.
serving now, we'd like to hear your views.
Indeed,
Absolutely.
indeed, especially if you're serving now. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Should we talk about Chris Pincher?
Oh yes.
Yeah, he's been suspended as a Conservative MP after allegations that he groped two men. The party said he had the whip removed after he was reported to Parliament's behavioural watchdog.
Well, the former Housing Minister, Kelly Tolhurst, has been appointed as his replacement, Downing Street have announced. So to tell us more now, we're joined by William Atkinson, Assistant Editor of Conservative Home. And it's all a bit of a mess, isn't it? Because this is now the fifth MP in 5 months to be seriously questioning their future because of this sort of bad behaviour.
Yes, quite. I think mess is the sort of word one can use at 6 a.m. To describe it, but the sort of words that Tory MPs and aides have been using in private, should we say, have been rather more fruity. But yes, as you point out, this is the fifth MP in the space of about 3 months to be accused of wrongdoing or involved in some way. We saw the by-elections last month caused by both Neil Parish being removed over Tractorgate, and then the even more serious sort of conviction of Imran Ahmed Khan. I don't want to insult the former Prime Minister of Pakistan for not allegations, for his conviction for sexual abuse. And so, yes, so what we know about the situation with Pincher is that the Carlton Club, he was at an event for the sort of Tory Friends of Cyprus where he gave a speech, and after the event he essentially consumed far too much alcohol, ended up groping. It was apparently two sort of separate male attendees. And then yesterday we had the farce, essentially, of while everybody knew that he was going to have the whip suspended at some point after he was asked to step down as Deputy Chief Whip, it took until the evening, actually, for the Prime Minister to finally boot him out.
Yeah, so there's been criticism of his judgment that it took him that long, and it took a formal complaint to the parliamentary watchdog to do that. Is that fair?
I think it is fair. I mean, not only because it seems a sort of fundamental double standards. You know, you may be absolutely horrified at Neil Parish watching pornography in the House of Commons chamber, but even I think the most sort of zealously puritanical of us would argue that that's not as bad as what Pincher has been accused of. And so I would say that to remove the whip so quickly from Neil Parish, but yet not to do so from Chris Pincher, seemed deeply incongruous, especially as the entire reason why Pincher was Deputy Chief Whip was that he had been a crucial member of the Prime Minister's shadow whipping operation back in January to try and shore up his position. So it almost looked like the Prime Minister was essentially letting a friend of his off with a sort of slapped wrist for what was frankly sort of appalling behaviour.
Yeah, and a lot of people will be questioning and are questioning Boris Johnson's judgment on giving him the job in the Whip's office in the first place, because he'd had to resign previously from a junior Whip job, hadn't he, because of very similar sorts of allegations.
Yes, exactly. Very similar sort of
somebody said the Prime Minister didn't know, but he must have known. It was the talk of Westminster.
Well, also, we've got a story in the Telegraph today which said basically he had to be cleared by this parliamentary ethics watchdog and before he could actually be appointed to the position. I actually remember, you know, the day back in January when he was appointed, and it took ages for this reshuffle to actually be completed. And now we know the reason why is apparently because he was being sort of shown to actually be of fit standard to actually hold this job. And remember, the Deputy Chief Whip is the person whose sort of job it is to handle pastoral issues. He's the person who's supposed to be keeping MPs in check over issues such as this. So for him to get himself into the state and to do what he's accused of doing is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, and senior Conservative MPs, Caroline Noakes and Karen Bradley, have written to the Whip's office, haven't they, saying that this could cause serious reputational damage. Are they right?
I think so.
Or has it already?
Well, I think it merely adds up to, you know, stories of everything from David Warburton to Neil Parish to Imran Ahmed Khan in recent weeks and months. It's essentially that the Tory party is kind of in the stage that it reached in the mid-90s where with the sort of John Major's Back to Basics campaign, where it seems that every single week there is another story about another Tory MP being a wrong 'un. And it's impossible to get rid of that sort of air of sleaze once it's managed to take hold.
Yeah, no, we discussed this yesterday on the programme, and a lot of people got in touch saying, hang on a minute, these men are individuals and they may have behaved badly or not, but that's their individual choice. It's not Boris Johnson's fault. But if it continuously happens, you have to question the guy at the top, don't you?
Well, I think people would say that the fish rots from the head, and I don't think the Prime Minister has been accused ever of anything on sort of this scale of sort of appalling behaviour. Not at all. I think that, in comparison, you can say with the Prime Minister's various peccadillos, there's nothing sort of comparable to this that he's been accused of. But frankly, we've already come out of 6 odd months of anguish over Partygate, which has already dented the Prime Minister and the government's reputation in the eyes of so many. And things like this just add to the idea that the Tory party, A, thinks that there's one rule for it and one rule for everybody else, but B, that it's fundamentally mired in sleaze. As a conservative voter and party member and long-standing supporter, it appalls me to be in the situation we are with the government, frankly, over issues like this at the moment.
Technical question, how long is this watchdog investigation going to take, and could it potentially lead to another by-election, do you think?
I'm not sure. I imagine it will be relatively swift, but I think even before it's concluded, I think there's the potential that Pincher will be asked to resign his seat. And remember, in Tamworth, he has a majority of about 19,000. It hasn't been sort of held by a Labour MP since about 2005, but we saw a majority of 24,000 overturned last week in Tiverton and Hollington. So I wouldn't say it's safe by any means.
But you could say to lose 1 MP is, sad. To lose 2 is a bit, dodgy. But to lose 3 is just darn careless.
No, exactly.
And it's more than that now. You can see it mounting, can't you? When we talk about, and the memories of the John Major government come flooding back, as you said, that he literally just couldn't keep a handle on MPs doing all sorts of terrible things all around him. But, of course, Tony Blair and New Labour were on the rise, and ultimately he lost to them. So there is no really magical opposition now, is there? So the argument is that Boris could still hold on, almost by default.
Well, yes, no, I think we had a poll out from Ipsos Mori yesterday, which showed that essentially on all but sort of one metric now, the Tories are losing to Labour, and overall they're about 11 points behind. And now, as you say, Tony Blair was once in a generation style political figure, and the swings he actually managed to make from sort of former Tory voters were what made his majorities in both 2001 and 1997 so remarkable. But what I think the most likely outcome at the moment is, looking at all the available polling, is essentially we end up in a hung parliament next time round, with a sort of Labour minority government propped up by the Lib Dems and the SNP with some form of formal deal or not. Which, of course, as I say, as a Tory voter, is not a particularly enticing prospect, but I think would probably be a fair judgment by the voters on the state of the government at the moment.
What would be what would be an enticing prospect if the Tories decided to get rid of Boris but hang on in there with another leader? Who would be the most enticing leader from your point of view, do you think?
Well, I mean, one doesn't want to sort of set the editorial policy, but I think from the sort of polling that we've seen, there are 2 figures in the cabinet who are most well known by the public, which are Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid. I think Rishi Sunak, for all his recent travails, according to polling, simply because he's perhaps the most well known, is the person people would most like to see take over. And I think, as ever, SW1 has rather overcorrected from all the talk of him being the prince across the water to, in the last couple of months, writing him off entirely. I think the truth is, if and when a leadership election comes, it'll be incredibly volatile. I think if we'd been doing this, say, 3 or 4 years ago in May 2019, nobody would have really thought Boris Johnson would be Prime Minister in about 2 months. But events moved very rapidly then, and I'm sure they will again.
Yeah, you never know who's going to suddenly come up from the rear, do you?
Wouldn't it be nice if it was somebody really exciting?
Well, it would be, yeah. If there isn't, is there anyone in Parliament who's...
Well, I don't know. You know better than us, actually, the personalities.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully there are some bubbling under, good, talented personalities.
I mean, quite frankly, from the perspective of the Conservative Party at the moment, we'd not necessarily we'd happily settle for just not dodgy from the sort of headlines we've been getting in MPs. I don't know about exciting, but simply
boring
would be wonderful.
Right, well, this is true, yeah. Listen, William, really good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. William Atkinson there from Conservative Home. GBViews at gbnews.uk if you want to react to anything William was saying. We'll talk about COVID cases in just a moment.
Who would be the not dodgiest, do you think, for you?
Yeah.
OK, let's have a look at the headlines now. Questions are being raised over why the Prime Minister delayed suspending the whip from now former Conservative MP Chris Pincher following allegations of sexual misconduct. He's being investigated by Parliament's watchdog after being accused of groping 2 men at a private members' club whilst very drunk on Wednesday.
Yes, we should clarify, he is still an MP, isn't he?
He's still an MP, but now an independent.
Yeah. The government is considering extra long-term mortgages on family homes as part of plans to ease the housing crisis. It means people could be able to buy more expensive properties with no expectation of completing the mortgage repayments during their lifetime. The house and any outstanding debt would then be passed on to their kids.
That's great, isn't it? Searches for bowel cancer symptoms on the NHS website have gone up tenfold, not surprisingly, following the death of Dame Deborah James this week. Health Service figures show there were just over 23,000 hits to the webpage the day after Dame Deborah died, up from 2,000 the day before.
The Royal College of Nursing claims its staff were left at risk during COVID without proper guidance, effective testing or protective equipment. It's calling for nurses to be fully involved in the government's inquiry into the pandemic.
And Age UK says 4 in 5 older carers worry whether they can keep providing care. The charity claims COVID and cuts to social care have shifted the burden onto those who look after loved ones, making their lives impossible. It's urging the government to improve benefit payments and access to counselling services. Now, COVID infection levels in the UK have risen by more than 30% this past week, with an estimated 2.3 million people believed to have the virus.
While still shy of the peak infection levels seen earlier this year, the estimated number of infections in the UK is the highest since late April and the highest yet seen for a summer month.
Well, we're joined by COVID data expert Tim White, who joins us to delve a little deeper into the numbers. Hello there, Tim. It does seem an astonishing rise, and so quickly. Can you tell us any more about the numbers we should know?
Yeah, good morning, Anne. Good morning, Paul. I don't think we should be unduly worried. It's good to be concerned, of course, and the figures are important to let us know how much prevalence there is in society. But we have been at higher points previously, not so long since, actually, and most of society didn't even really notice. The fact is that there are new variants, but they are not more malicious, more dangerous than the earlier variants, and the vaccines do seem to be coping equally as well against these. So for the moment, I think it's, as I said, not too much of a worry.
Will be dubious about data on COVID, should they be?
No, I don't think so. The ONS survey has been the most accurate since we first got to grips with COVID and what was happening in the days when we didn't have those vaccines that we've just been seeing. So things have changed enormously since then. One of the bigger problems is potentially that coming into winter, that there could be a combination again of COVID and flu is probably more worrying to most medics right now, I would suggest, looking ahead to this coming winter, Paul.
Yeah, we know that there are quite a lot of people in hospital with COVID. What we don't seem to know is whether they were there for other reasons and have now been tested positive for COVID, or whether they've gone in for COVID. Is that right?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Anne, it is. The data seem to suggest that around about 1/3 of those in hospital are primarily there for COVID. The others are called incidental infections. But also, we don't know how many contracted while they were in hospital as well, which is another factor, because it is obviously just still all across society everywhere. It's almost impossible at this stage to isolate from it. But again, those in hospital with COVID aren't often very seriously ill at all, because mainly of the natural immunity that's built up and also the vaccines, which are still doing a terrific job. And the death rates, although they're a lot slower to catch up, if you like, obviously people who are being infected now and may sadly subsequently die of COVID won't be registered for a few weeks at max and a couple of weeks minimum, then they're still really stable and relatively low. It's a horrible thing to say that 23 deaths a day is low, but that's about the size of it at the moment. And considering the wider population and other causes of deaths, that's not an alarming statistic at all.
It doesn't sound like you're worried. Some people are suggesting that maybe we should be wearing face masks again. I know you're not a medical expert, but what's your feeling about it?
Well, masks certainly do help deter the spread. there are still some people who would argue that, but I think it's pretty widely proven. But also a lot of people who are against masks just will refuse to wear them anyway. And so mask mandates themselves don't seem to do as much good as a lot of people would like. Whether we should be wearing them now or not, I don't think there's any need at the moment. I think the need will come and everything will change if, and it's a big if, it's not necessarily going to happen, we get a new variant which is more resistant to the current treatments that we have. And if that's the case, then obviously the things that Boris has so far said that he won't rule out but won't take any action, like masks and like further isolations and, heaven forbid, another lockdown, that could come back into play. But I think those are extremely unlikely at the moment. And as I said, at the moment, like you just said it yourself, Paul, I'm pretty confident that nothing materially is going to change for people watching this programme in the next few months.
I think the alarming thing, though, for a lot of people is that not only it's like, if you haven't had it yourself, you know somebody who has. But actually, we're all becoming increasingly aware that we all know people who've had it more than once. I don't know whether you have any data on that, but it's quite alarming, the idea that you can have it once, twice, 3 times.
It is, because we've, I think, been brought up and come to think in the last couple of years of COVID as this very dangerous disease, which it was initially, now less so. If we think about the number of people we know who've had a cold more than once, or a flu type virus more than once, then it puts it in perspective a bit more. And it really is in that sort of category now. And I think we're expecting more people to die of flu in the coming season than there will be from COVID. So let's just try and put those things in perspective, and let's try to settle people down. As I said, flu is the main worry. Looking at Australia right now, there has been quite an outbreak. And again, you do get different strains of flu, and seasonally and over time, they do tend to come every 3 to 5 years, and we haven't had a bad flu outbreak for a while now. So I think that's something that the NHS and hospital managers and the Department for Health will be looking at even more so than COVID over the coming weeks. I still think that this little wave has got a bit more to go in terms of numbers, but not too much higher, and I don't think that it'll be causing society any real problems.
Tim White, thanks very much indeed for joining us so early in the morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and for reassuring us. That was quite reassuring.
Yeah. We'll be talking to doctors later on in the programme as well. I just heard one doctor who works for the World Health Organization, David Nabarro, who's a very well-known doctor, saying that he is advising his family to go back to wearing masks in public because he's worried that if you get COVID too many times, your chances of getting long COVID are higher.
Yeah.
And that's what people are almost more frightened of now.
Yeah, and that's very serious.
So we'll be finding out more from the medical aspect a bit later on in the programme, but I don't know how you feel about wearing masks again in shops or something like that, would you? I would.
Yeah.
I did the other day.
I don't like it, but you do it.
Yeah.
GB Views at gbnews.uk on that. Also, coming up, 50 years of Pride. We'll be seeing how people will be celebrating the milestone. Stay with us for that after this.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England. Slowly working eastwards, but much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well, and generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. But it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon. And certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Yeah, welcome back. Hi there. What time is it? 6:27.
6:27 already.
You're watching, and I know, doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself? Yeah, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Paul this morning. Stephen's off doing something, don't know what at the moment, but we'll find out next weekend.
Yeah.
Now on to rather a serious story for you. A serial sex attacker who drugged and assaulted straight men could have attacked many more victims who may be too embarrassed to come forward. That's according to detectives.
35-year-old Luis da Silva Neto has been found guilty of drugging and assaulting two men at a luxury house in the Oxfordshire countryside. He used the date rape drug GHB on the men in separate incidents last year before going on to commit the offences.
GB News' Home and Security editor Mark White reports.
Captured on police body-worn video, the moment detectives arrest a serial sex offender.
Put your trousers on. So at this point in time, you're under arrest.
Luis da Silva Neto drugged his male victims before raping or sexually assaulting them. Two men reported their attacks to authorities, but police fear there may be many more of his victims still out there. Da Silva Neto would often look for men at night, especially those that had too much to drink. He filmed on his mobile phone as he went hunting them in public toilets. Da Silva Neto drugged both his victims in separate incidents inside this exclusive cottage here in the Oxfordshire village of Middle Barton. In one incident, he picked up his victim outside a nightclub in West London before driving him 73 miles here and raping him. That victim told police he was picked up outside this nightclub in Chelsea. He'd been looking for a taxi. All he could remember was drinking a small amount of liquid inside De Silvanetto's car. Then waking up in the cottage sometime later, having been raped. In interviews in police custody, De Silvanetto insisted the interaction had been fully consensual.
I was on the King's Road. I stopped to get some cash out, and I started talking to this guy as well. And he told me that he's been to the club, blah, blah. I was like, do you want to have a drink together or whatever? He was like, yeah. He's like, I'm married, but yeah.
De Silvanetto's other victim knew his attacker when he says his trust was betrayed in the most appalling manner.
Basically, he drugged me and he used me. I don't want to go into details. I don't want to memorise it again. I don't want to relive it. For me, this is the worst experience I've ever survived or lived through. I'm heterosexual, I'm Catholic, I'm more religious, and something that I just need to digest.
Police say De Silvanetto appears to have very deliberately targeted straight men, believing perhaps that they'd be too embarrassed to report their attack.
It is entirely possible that there are other offences out there and other victims who have not as yet been identified or identified themselves to us. So what I really want to do is encourage victims to come forward and have the confidence to do that. You know, a conviction of somebody for offences like this is quite often the platform from which other people will then have that confidence and feel empowered to come forward and feel safer to do so.
Authorities believe it's likely De Silvanetto used the drug GHB. Only small amounts can render a victim unconscious. The gay serial killer Stephen Port used GHB on his 4 victims, young men who he killed with high doses of the drug, before dumping their bodies in this graveyard near his home in Barking in East London. GHB was also the weapon of choice for serial rapist Reynard Sinaga, a Manchester nurse who's believed to have raped more than 200 young men since 2005. Police say these events are thankfully very rare. Luis De Silvanetto has now been convicted for the crimes he committed. Police are appealing for anyone else who believes they may have been drugged and assaulted by him to come forward. Mark White, GB News.
Well, thanks very much, Mark. Terrible story there.
Yep.
It's 6:32. You're watching No, you're not watching Good Morning. You're watching
Good Morning.
I just went back 30 years, I think. I was going to say something completely different, totally different programme.
You were going to say
30 years ago.
Good Morning from Paul and Anne.
Yeah, that's right. Something like that. I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness. When your mind does that to you.
Yeah. Look, lots of you getting in touch with us this morning about bees and wasps because.
Now this is interesting because in a moment we'll be joined by Pete Price and Dawn Neeson, who are coming in to help us review the newspapers. Just in a moment. And last week Pete was telling us about his bees that have set up home in his home, and it's going to cost him a fortune to get rid of them because with bees you have to move them on gently. You have to be friendly, as you were saying.
Indeed. So lots of you have been getting in touch with us this morning about bees and wasps. Diana, very good morning to you. Diana says, we have a bumblebee nest under our park home, right by our back door. We will wait for them to go, then fill in the hole they went in. They are in and out from dawn till dusk. Very busy bees.
So they're going to wait until they move on. They usually do move on after a while. Most beekeepers, this is from JB, hi JB, most beekeepers won't charge to remove a hive and are just pleased to get a cheap additional hive if they are honeybees. A honeybee hive retails at 75 quid.
Wow, OK. And then
maybe that's what you need to do, is to get in a local bee...
Lover.
Yeah.
What do
you call them? Aspidistas or something?
There is a fancy
word. There is a word, isn't there?
For them, yeah.
Lepidopterists. I'll look it up. Something like that.
And Keith, morning Keith, says, I have had wasps' nests in my attic and my shed. I got a proprietary wasp nest killer from my local ironmonger, and at some risk to myself, managed to destroy both nests. The product is a jet foam aerosol. Jack the Giant Killer ain't got nothing on me.
Yeah, that's okay with wasps.
Yeah.
But with bees, you have to do it. We have to look after wasps.
Can I just see? But these are about honeybees, and we've got wasps. What about we had bumblebees in the garden, which don't actually. They just bumble around and they're lovely, but they're not honeybees. They don't. I don't think they make honey.
Well, Diana says she's got a bumblebee nest. No, they're different. They're bigger, much bigger.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Honeybees are smaller, and you can sort of mistake them for wasps if you're not careful. Anyway, we'll discuss all this and more with Pete Price when he comes in a couple of moments, and Dawn to have a look through the newspapers. Do stay with us.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello again, welcome back. It's 6:37. You're watching Breakfast with Anne and Paul. Time to go through the papers now. Joining us this morning is Dawn Neeson, the former editor of The Daily Star, and Pete Price, legendary radio and TV broadcaster, who has a bee problem, and it's been getting everybody talking this morning already. Tell us about your bee problem again.
Well, first of all, can I say I'm thrilled to be working with that lady at the end. We haven't seen each other for ages, and what a great team today. So excited to be here today.
Good.
You could say we're buzzing.
No, I don't think you should.
Here we go.
I was wondering how long before the bee puns would
Walking
start.
through Liverpool, I've had, well, if it isn't the Queen Bee. Thank you very much indeed. We've had all that. So last time I was on here, the day before, these bees came to my window, sort of 50 to 60,000 in a swarm. I managed to close the window in time. I still, to this day, do not know what would have happened if they'd have got in my home. There they are. That's my bedroom window. I was absolutely mortified. Now in my roof.
That is massive.
We're talking now about £1,000 to get rid of them so far. £1,000.
Is that a pound a bee?
Oh,
it looks like it.
Have they been identified as bees, bumblebees, or honeybees?
No,
or
they're
what?
definitely honeybees.
They are
but
honeybees.
I've had everybody wants to get involved now through social media and through my radio show. And this lovely beekeeper, Fred, came with Tom, who's a pest control guy. They were hysterical. Fred bought me 2 jars of honey. The last thing I need is 2 jars of honey. But then told me a story about one of his clients who's got bees in the roof, and the honey is dripping through the bedroom the bedroom walls. It's seeping through. And this is what I'm worried about. I've got to get rid of them because...
So what have they advised you? That it would... That you,
they're now talking about... They were talking about stripping the roof back to get the queen out and to get the honeycomb out. But now they're talking about putting a tube on it with a box on the roof to put the bees into there with some honey. They can't get back, empty the box. They can't get back, empty the box. One day the queen turns around and goes, where's all my bees?
Yeah.
And then they come back. Oh, sorry, then she goes, it's going to take months, and it's unreal.
That
it's
really
unreal.
is.
And by the way, the council will not deal with bees. Wasps, yeah. Bees, no.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't know. If it's
well, wasps, because they probably kill them.
Yeah.
But bees, they can't, and it's an expensive and long-winded job.
Well, I said, can't you smoke them? And they said they get slightly angry, and you have to keep your window closed. I keep my window closed anyway. Honestly, it's opened a can of worms.
No, it's opened a hive of bees.
Hive of bees,
but,
yeah.
It's apiarist, I think, was the word I was...
That's the word.
Apiarist is
but if anybody
bee.
can help me out there,
well,
please
no,
get
you see,
in touch with me
already,
on social media.
JB has got in touch, said most beekeepers won't charge to remove a hive because they're just pleased to get a cheap additional hive if they're honeybees. A honeybee hive retails at 75 quid.
Yeah, but the problem is, I'm in a penthouse, so I'm in the top.
The queen bee is in a very difficult spot, presumably. It's not just
she'll be
hanging
right
on
in
a
the
tree
middle
or
of the
something.
roof. She'll be somewhere there, just sitting, waiting. Come on, get me out, Pricey, if you can.
And honey is coming through the wall.
Not on mine, not on mine.
Not yet.
This one
Not
of these
yet,
clients,
but...
not yet. I mean, and also apparently, joking apart, it then attracts other vermin like rats. And one day I was in my kitchen, I'm 3 stories up, it's a new build, and I saw a tail in my kitchen. It had come up the walls, and I did not know that rats could travel like that.
Rats are amazing.
So the last thing I need is them after honey.
This is a real hornet's nest.
I've got a conversion, and between the new wall and the very old wall, there is sometimes a gap.
Yeah.
And I heard scurrying, or you could hear at night.
Hello?
I had to get a man in to come and fix them up.
I think I've walked into a Stephen King.
I was about to say, do you want to contribute to the pest anecdotes?
Yes, actually, shall we see the seamless link between rats and the House of
Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah, take it away.
See, I set you up there and you put it away.
One. Yeah, this is pretty much every front page today. The Independent, the Times, the Telegraph, all about Chris Pincher, the MP for Tamworth, who, after fresh allegations yesterday that Boris Johnson heard personally, has finally been suspended. Now, Boris claimed that, it was listening to the victims that finally made him make this decision. However, those who are against Boris are saying, well, this is common knowledge in the House. We all knew what Chris Pincher was like. So, you should have acted before on this. And, I think we were discussing earlier, Anne, you can't but agree with that, can you? If you're aware that a person has this reputation, and it is common knowledge, not just in Parliament, why would you even promote him, which has happened?
Well, the only answer to that is because he is totally loyal to
He's
Prime
very,
Minister.
very loyal.
And Boris Johnson seems to really like... He prioritises loyalty above maybe...
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean,
credentials
Pincher had to resign in 2017 and was promoted after that. And because he is so loyal to Boris, one of the few that are, vocally loyal to Boris, is why he's survived for so long. But... yesterday, it had to happen, didn't it? And he has been suspended now. But, there are more claims expected to come out this week about him. And, there are some sort of like quite fun quotes in, I think it's The Eye today, from people that have worked with him. I mean, he's got a nickname in Parliament. It's a rude word for bottom. Goes with his Pincher. And
right.
That's his nickname in Parliament, evidently.
Right.
Because of his behaviour.
Right.
So it's very...
Can I just say in this? I knew nothing about this story. I heard about it. It's, as you say, it's in all the papers. Isn't there a bigger picture as well? I heard that the man is a troubled soul. What's happened to duty of care in work? What happens to HR and helping? In other companies, they help. Why shouldn't MPs get some help if in fact, because he's not been proved guilty yet.
No.
We're only hearing stories.
Yeah.
But every paper
Although he has
proved
admitted that he got
Yeah.
ridiculously drunk.
But that's
He got
and
ridiculously
embarrassed-
drunk.
and
He hasn't
embarrassed
admitted
himself.
anything
That's
else.
the other
Yeah.
thing.
Yes.
His resignation letter actually started last night. I drank too much. It's like a letter from your teenage son, isn't it?
But he evidently needs help, though.
I mean, I heard the former Minister, Anna Soubry, saying it is well known that he is a troubled soul.
Yeah.
And that is a very sad thing
It
to
is
say
a
about
sad
somebody. So he needs help. And apparently Westminster just doesn't have the infrastructure for giving that sort
Maybe
of
they
help.
should put that in place because, let's face it, in every job, broadcasting, every job, there is help there. MPs have a terrible time. Whatever, they can't win, whatever they do. Love or hate any MP.
I should imagine...
They do need help.
Should imagine the HR department's quite busy. This is the fifth Tory MP to be suspended or ordered to stay away over the past 6 months.
Yeah.
So it's quite busy there, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And we know, we're hearing more, that there is a culture of drinking too much in Westminster, and it needs to be addressed properly.
No, it really does. I mean,
Yeah.
the Carlton Club, where this is alleged to have taken place, I mean, it was men only into 2008, Anne. But it's one of the few late-night venues where, because of the hours Parliament works, which also needs to be looked at, doesn't it? I mean, why would you don't need to work those hours, do you? I mean, coming out late at night, stressful job, but you're going to go drinking to the early hours of the morning. I mean, why can't we just have
Let's
normal
remind
hours?
everybody, too, the old journalist days, journalists were known for drinking.
Yes.
They were drinkers.
In Fleet Street, yeah,
They
absolutely.
were drinkers.
You're not looking at me there, Mr Price.
I'm looking right at the camera behind you.
GBviews at gbnews.uk, if you want to feed back to us on that one. Holiday chaos, more flight cancellations, Dawn.
Yes, I'm getting all the good stories today, the really cheerful ones. This is it's in
all of them. And it's not just Britain.
No, it's not. And that's the interesting thing, Anne, because people are going, oh, it's Brexit, all these cancellations. But it's not, because it's in America, you've got problems. Germany have got it worse than us, and they've actually had to employ people from Turkey to get their airports actually functioning. And you've got strikes going on in France and Spain as well. But it's a new wave of cancellations announced next week, with British Airways bearing the brunt of them. And it's all to do with the complicated slots that flights are allocated even at the airports. And it's like the rules have changed as well, which have made the situation even worse. And so there's been 78% increase in cancellations across Europe. So it's not just here.
Would it put you off going on holiday?
I'm so glad you said that, Dawn. Lots of my pals are now back in the industry, going on the cruise ships as entertainers. A mate of mine, John Martin's, just had major problems in Germany, waiting 2-3 hours. It isn't England, it's every single place. Yeah.
And when you think about it, is it that surprising? The world has just gone through a pandemic.
Yes.
You have to keep reminding yourself of this, don't you? I mean, if we had said we're going to go through a global pandemic, if you'd told me 10 years ago, you wouldn't have believed it. You would have thought it was the plot of a sci-fi movie. But we have just been through that incredible global phenomenon. We're not totally at the other end of it either.
Well, no.
Maybe it's not that surprising that it's going to take a bit longer to get back to
but I guess
anything like normal.
but I think the annoying thing is, and I know this because Lufthansa lost my luggage last Saturday, and so
That's a headline for you.
So I
Lufthansa
lost my luggage, and now they've flown it to Munich the day after I came back, which is good. So. I think my luggage is having a nice holiday at the moment, but I do feel sorry for the airline staff because they told me, it's management. They've scheduled all these, they've scheduled these flights, and now we can't meet them, and so it's. One of the ladies did say to me, she went, it's chaos in London at the moment, it's chaos. I thought, well, it's your airline and you provide the ground staff and the baggage staff.
Yeah.
So...
It's like they didn't plan for the end of the pandemic. I mean, who knew that people would want to travel after 2 years of not going anywhere?
Yeah.
Well, everyone realised that was the case, apart from the airlines.
Yeah. Just very quickly, do you know what the most annoying thing is, though? There's no one to talk to about it.
No.
There's no phone line. There's no phone line to call.
But they're also hiding.
All I've got is automated emails and automated chatbots who don't understand what I'm saying.
And that's even the worst thing, because I think a lot of passengers going through hell, sleeping on airport terminal floors and all the rest of it, they would put up with it for their holiday as long as they were told what was going on.
Yes.
You mentioned about your luggage. Last time I was in Manchester Airport, I've never seen such hundreds upon hundreds of suitcases. People are just leaving them. They're just going because they've just had enough. Two of my friends just came back, 3.5 hours waiting for their suitcase off the plane.
Yeah, only take cabin baggage.
Hand luggage, absolutely.
I'm surprised. Were you travelling for work?
Yeah, that's why I was at the gym. That's why I was doing reports last weekend in a shorts and t-shirt.
Same shorts and t-shirts.
It was. I was wearing it for 3 days.
And by the way, you look great in shorts.
No.
Oh, thanks, mate.
But why didn't you just take cabin baggage?
No, I did have some as well,
Yeah.
but I had my laptop in it, and I had a jumper in it and a t-shirt.
So
and
you
that
took
was it.
you took one in the
But the
holds as
suits
well.
were in the bag.
And it just depends on which airline you're flying with as to how big your hand luggage can be. And it's like you can't fit anything apart from a mobile.
Interesting you say about that, Dawn. Some of the big airlines, like Emirates, and no problems at all.
Yeah.
And if you're flying first or business class, no problems at all.
Speaking of flying, there's a story apparently about pigeons.
Oh.
Yes.
We've been talking about my story. I'm getting all the yeah, absolutely.
We've been talking about bees. We're talking about pigeons.
Bees, rats, and pigeons. Now we have it's the front page of the Daily Star, which is having some fun with the story. This is a racing pigeon called Bob, and it ended up 4,000 miles away in the US after getting lost on its way back home to Gateshead. So basically, this little pigeon is owned by Alan Todd, who is now frantic with worry. But the pigeon sort of like disappeared. It was meant to be flying from Guernsey back to Gateshead, and ended up in Alabama in America.
That's not a homing pipigeon, is it?
It's not very good at its job, is it?
That's not a homing pigeon.
We still use pigeons to send messages to each other up north. So.
It'd be quicker than anything else, I think, at the moment, wouldn't it? Even an email.
Bob now has to be flown back on a plane.
Well, they might lose his luggage. Who knows on the way?
It's about £3,000.
Yeah.
There was
really?
a story last week about pigeons having to have passports, homing pigeons. If you fly them from France, for instance, to England, they're going to have passports.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Do you think that's a Brexit bendy banana story?
Yeah, I think it might be, yeah. Are they going to be blue passports?
Look, we've got to say goodbye and thank you for the moment, but you'll be back and we'll probably find some more pigeon stories. I think you've got a pigeon story to tell us a bit later.
Yes, there's some more pigeon-related issues. Coming up on Breakfast, it is 6:50. Let's do something different now. Some children with additional educational, physical and emotional needs are waiting 11 months longer to be adopted than undiagnosed children.
While those from ethnic minorities are waiting 3 months longer. Currently, over 65% of children waiting for new families to take them in are categorised in these groups, creating huge strain on the centres attempting to find them homes. Well, to tell us more about this disparity is the chair of the National Adoption Recruitment Steering Group, Mark Owers. Hello there, Mark. It sounds so sad, but I know you've got a story to tell us that eventually turned out to be a very happy one. Tell us how you became an adoptive father.
Morning, both. Yes, my wife and I spent about 7 years trying to have our own children. And then we went to an adoption agency. We wanted 2 children, a brother and a sister. And these are some of the children that wait longest, sibling groups. And we thought we wanted a baby and a 9-month-old or an 8-month-old so we could have them in our own image. And before we knew it, we'd fallen in love with a 4-year-old and, near 5-year-old and his 2-year-old sister. We had an open mind more than we thought. And before we knew it, they just spoke to us off the page and we fell in love with them.
Interesting you say you had a sort of open mind more than you thought, because, as you said, I suppose most parents start off wanting one thing, but falling in love with a child changes your whole life, doesn't it?
It does, and that's the whole reason for the campaign, Anne. We want people to come to adoption with a much more open mind. We want people to think differently. At the moment, most people come to adoption for a younger child, a baby, like we did. But we want the public to know that these children who wait longest, sometimes for a year longer than most, they might be harder to place, but they're no harder to love.
Yeah. How long are we talking about? You mentioned a year there. Are there cases where the time period has been longer?
In some instances, yes, some children wait 18 months, 2 years. And what the research very clearly shows us, the longer a child waits for adoption, the less likely they are to be adopted. They're timed out. What we want is for all children to access adoption and forever loving homes in an equal way.
You mentioned that when they consider adoption, you want them to have a more open mind. What do you mean by that? What are the misconceptions or preconceptions they have?
Well, many people don't think they have the skills to adopt an older child. They think that an older child might have more difficulties. Interestingly, within our own experience, in adopting a 5-year-old, we actually knew more about him. We knew about his behaviours. We knew what his triggers were. We knew his experiences. And whilst it's wonderful to adopt a baby, of course, as well, you don't actually know how they're going to behave. So you know more about an older child. But importantly, there's more support available now from adopters than ever before. And so the way in which we're able to prepare people right from the beginning of the adoption process throughout, including things like peer support, access to the government's therapeutic support fund, and also the way in which we link other adopters together for peer support, that makes a massive difference to the way in which people are able to care for all of these children.
And you often hear stories from adoptive parents, or even parents who've tried to adopt and been rejected for some reason, that it's very, very difficult to convince the authorities you're the right person. Is it even more difficult if you are being considered to adopt a child or children who come from those groups that we were talking about, who may be a bit more challenging?
It can be, Anne, but every child is different and every adoptive person that comes forward is different. And it's only right and proper that we do very thorough assessments, because these children have had a difficult start in life. And when we place them with a new family, we need to make sure we're making the right decision. But we know that the support is available, and we know that people, when they have an open mind and that they're given the chance to be vulnerable, to be honest, to ask for help, and to be open and ready, that they can have life-changing experiences.
Well, good luck with the campaign. Before we love and leave you, your story actually has an even cuter ending, because after you adopted those two children, tell us what happened.
So, yes, after 7 years of fertility treatment and then saying goodbye to our fertility, a year after adopting, my wife amazingly fell pregnant with triplets.
Wow.
So you've got 5 children.
We went from 0 to 5 in less than 18 months, Anne.
That's incredible, isn't it? Congratulations. It must be wonderful for you.
It is wonderful, hell of a ride, but we couldn't do it without the support of our family and friends and our adoption agency.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I hope you get lots of babysitters.
Yeah.
Well, if you're offering...
I think I've done my bit.
You just dropped yourself in it there, Anne.
Yeah.
Listen, Mark, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us
Yeah, that's
this
absolutely
morning.
brilliant. What an amazing story, isn't it? But you hear of that a lot, actually. People who, as he used that term, they gave up on their fertility.
Yeah.
And you choose a different path and everything. And then suddenly nature sort of goes, hang on a minute.
Step in.
Lands you in it with triplets.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
OK, well, we've got lots more coming up on the programme as well at 7 o'clock, so don't go anywhere. Lots more to come, including looking at why COVID seems to be on the rise once more.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England. Slowly working eastwards, but much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the Highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well, and generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening, and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. But it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon. And certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week, and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Saturday, the 2nd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne Diamond and Paul Hawkins.
Yeah, we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you, so you've got no excuse, basically. Here's what you're waking up to this morning.
Chris Pincher has been suspended as a Tory MP following allegations of groping at private members' club. The now independent MP is still under investigation by Parliament's behaviour watchdog, but what fallout could this have for the government?
COVID infections in the UK have jumped by 32% in a week. 2.3 million infections were reported in 1 week in the middle of June, representing one of the highest leaps since the start of the pandemic. We'll be trying to find out why.
Also this morning, education bosses have called for a crackdown on so-called Mickey Mouse university courses. Some student groups have called for more data on how many graduates get a good job after taking these courses. But what do you make of it?
As ever, of course, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk. A bit earlier on, we were showing a new army recruitment video. We'll show it again a bit later on in the programme. It was really stressing. It was made by the army rather than by politicians for recruitment purposes. And it shows a sort of robot going through a battlefield. And then in the end, they say, we don't, robots are very important.
There it is.
You see it. But the basic message is, while cyber warfare, all digital, everything else, is an important investment in today's modern warfare, what we really still need are soldiers.
Yeah.
And you see where the robot starts to think about it, really, and becomes a human being. And basically that seems to be what the army is saying, which is, almost at odds with political thinking, where they're making cutbacks.
Yeah, it's a weird contradiction. We'll be talking about that later on in the programme. So do get in touch with us if you are serving in the military, or indeed you have served in the military. gbviews@gbnews.
Yeah, well, here's one view, a little bit controversial, from Aid. Hi. He says, I will seriously advise any young person against joining the army because old men send young men to illegal, senseless wars whilst their own kids are sent to Oxford and Cambridge.
What do you make of that? gbviews@gbnews.uk. It is 3 minutes past 7. Our top story this morning then, Chris Pincher suspended as a Conservative MP after allegations that he groped two men at a private members' club in London.
The party said he had the whip removed after he was reported to Parliament's behavioural watchdog. Well, former Housing Minister Kelly Tolhurst has been appointed as his replacement. That's according to Downing Street. That's the latest from them.
Joining us now is Dan Felvey, political correspondent for the Daily Express. Morning to you, Dan. Lots of questions being asked this morning about the Prime Minister's judgment when it came to taking action, why it took so long. What's your take on it?
Good morning. Yeah, there's lots of questions as to exactly why this took as long as it did. These are allegations which were first made public on Thursday evening. There have been rumours that these have been going around in Westminster for several months. Downing Street admitted that even the Prime Minister had heard aspects of these rumours in advance. So questions to why he was ever appointed in the first place have been asked. Boris Johnson isn't exactly popular with a lot of his backbenchers anyway at the moment, and he's now got to do an awful lot in order to win back their trust, in order to tell them that he is serious when it comes to things such as sexual assault. His own MPs, a lot of female MPs, are saying that there needs to be zero tolerance when it comes to sexual assault, and they want to see him take action to now back up those words and prove that he's going to make sure that's the case and going forwards.
I think we have to be, I suppose, careful, don't we? Because a lot of people have made remarks in the last 24 hours or so about Chris Pincher and the fact that whilst his behaviour might be under serious question now, and even his future, he is what they're calling, a lot of his colleagues are calling, a troubled soul. And what seems to be also in question is that Westminster doesn't seem to have any HR people who will walk in and help somebody recover from what may be a problem.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. One of the problems that Westminster has is its bizarre, unique setup that is unlike any other workplace, means there is no HR. And it's a problem for everyone. It's a problem when it comes to workers who want to make complaints. There is now an independent complaints commission that they can go to, but that was only set up in the last few years. And there's very little support for anyone out there outside of the party remit. It means that if you don't feel you have the support to be able to go and talk to your colleagues, there really is nowhere to turn.
And what will happen next, I suppose? A lot of people will also be asking whether he should stand down as an MP. That would cause another by-election. They can't afford another, can they?
Well, that's certainly the one thing that Boris Johnson will be hoping doesn't have to happen. I mean, we've just had two by-elections last week, both of which the results came out and were not exactly the way that Boris Johnson would have liked them to have gone. In fact, they were far worse than many people have been expecting them to be for Boris Johnson. So a by-election is the last thing the Tory party will want, but they're going to have to prove they're taking this seriously. If they're not going to, they've removed the whip, that means that now it's down to whether Chris Pincher wants to stand down himself. There's nothing more the party can do. He is elected. The only thing they can do is put pressure on him to now resign himself. If he doesn't, it's out of the Prime Minister's hands.
Well, we'll leave it there for the moment and follow the story continuously. Thank you very much indeed, Dan. Thank you. Time for some headlines now.
Yep. Questions being raised over why the Prime Minister delayed suspending the whip from now former Conservative MP, still an MP, but not for the Conservative Party at the moment, Chris Pincher, following allegations of sexual misconduct. He's being investigated by Parliament's watchdog after being accused of groping two men at a private members' club while drunk on Wednesday.
Now, the government is considering extra long-term mortgages on family homes as part of plans to ease the housing crisis. That would mean that people could be able to buy more expensive properties with no expectation of completing those mortgage repayments during their own lifetime. So the house and any outstanding debt then in the mortgage could be passed on to their children.
Elsewhere this morning, searches for bowel cancer symptoms on the NHS website have gone up tenfold following the death of Dame Deborah James this week. Health Service figures show there were just over 23,000 hits to the webpage the day after Dame Deborah died. That's up from 2,000 the day before.
The Royal College of Nursing claims its staff were left at risk during COVID without proper guidance, effective testing or protective equipment. They're calling for nurses to be fully involved in the government's inquiry into the pandemic.
Age UK says 4 in 5 older carers worry whether they can keep providing care. The charity claims COVID and cuts to social care have shifted the burden onto those who look after loved ones, making their lives impossible. It's urging the government to improve benefit payments and access to counselling services.
And British drivers were handed a record £8.6 million worth of parking fines in a year for leaving their cars in places like shopping centres and service stations. The DVLA says an average of 23,000 tickets were issued every day from April 2021 to March this year. The government's Levelling Up department says it's determined to end rip-off parking practices.
Just out of interest, why is the Department for Levelling Up
Yeah.
talking about that particular story on parking charges? Is that part of the government's Levelling Up agenda, to level up on parking?
I don't know. It seems a bit weird.
A little bit weird.
I mean,
Anyway,
something's got to be done about outrageous parking. Well, both outrageous parking and outrageous parking charges.
yes, both. It's all outrageous.
It's all absolutely outrageous.
We're outraged.
Enough to pay for parking.
Another government department that we're going to talk about now, Department of Education, is urging universities to include postgraduate employment statistics on their course portfolios in response to criticism of certain degrees being ran by their departments.
Yet the guidance is not mandatory, but it is hoped that students who face the possibility of growing tuition fees will be able to identify courses with the best job prospects and graduate schemes. Well, to tell us more what students can do best to help their career prospects without getting into terrible debt is the director of the Higher Education Policy Institute, Nick Hillman. Hello there, Nick. I mean, it is very expensive, so students want value for money. And I suppose the first thing they should be asking is, will I be able to get a job when I get this degree?
Yes, it's certainly true that if you ask people who've put in a UCAS form, what is the number one reason why you want to go to university, the top answer is, I want to get a fulfilling, rewarding career afterwards. They don't want to be millionaires. They wouldn't mind being millionaires, but they don't want to be millionaires particularly. They just want a rewarding, fulfilling career.
I mean, time was where if you were clever enough to go to university, you knew you would be able to come out of university and walk into a job. But it's just not like that anymore. So you've got to pick your course really carefully. And what this crackdown seems to be on is what they used to call Mickey Mouse courses that, you know, like media studies or something like that, that don't necessarily lead to anything.
Yes, well, I would say that's partly true. But actually, the labour market for graduates is still very, very strong. So most graduates do still walk into good jobs, and it's actually stronger even than it was before COVID. And some careers you didn't used to need a degree for, you now do, like nursing. So actually getting a degree is still a very, very good route to a secure job. But you're right that not every course has the same positive outcomes. So what the government's saying is on any advertising, if a course has less good outcomes than others, that should be there up front and centre so people know. There are some challenges with that because if you're a middle class person and you've had life relatively easy, then you're less likely to drop out of your course. You're more likely to get a graduate level job afterwards. If you're from an underrepresented or disadvantaged group, it's just harder to survive those 3 years of university and come out the other side. And it's not necessarily the university's fault.
Yeah. What do you make of the term Mickey Mouse courses, by the way? Like, how would you define a Mickey Mouse course?
Well, I mean, I think it's fair for the government to say a Mickey Mouse course is one where the outcomes are not very good. What I don't agree with is when people pick off courses they just think sound a bit silly and say that must be a Mickey Mouse course. Because very often those courses are ones that are absolutely designed for a particular industry, and the industry is crying out for people in that area. The courses with the worst outcomes tend to be in the creative arts. So they tend to be around those sorts of jobs in drama and theatre land. But even those are really important to the country because we want a thriving West End. We want thriving theatres up and down the UK. And so, so long as you go into those sorts of courses with your eyes open and know it will be harder to get secure work afterwards, it might still be the right thing for you.
That's why you need the information. Nick, thanks very much indeed, because now we're going to cross to one of our GB viewers who has a view on this. Joseph, I think we can join you now. Hi there, Joseph.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Anne.
Hello there. Lovely to talk to you. Now, have you got a degree? And if you have, or even if you have not, how has your career gone? And do you think a degree would have been worth it or would not have been worth it? Tell us your thoughts.
Sure. Yes, so I don't have a degree. I would have liked to have gone to university, but that didn't happen. I'm a professional individual, and I'm doing just fine. So I would say that I've got lots of friends and family who did go to university who are also doing just fine as well. Do you need a degree or not? I don't think you necessarily need a degree for lots of jobs, but I certainly think that there are going to be a lot of jobs that really do require, specific knowledge. So I was mentioning to one of your colleagues yesterday about sort of scientific-based roles, and I'm particularly interested in science. Had I gone to university, I would definitely looked into science, and
I know that I think you've got a sister, I think, who did go to university. And I guess even though you might consider that both of you are doing well, the difference between you will be the expense that she had to pay to go.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that, and the massive debt that leaves people with, including my dear sister. So I know that she's paid that off now, but I know it took a very long time. Not too sure how I would personally feel if I had a massive debt for education. Probably not that good about it, to be honest.
So, bottom line question, I guess, is, because I get this all the time from my kids, is if you had children who were considering, they were old enough to consider university, would you warn them off or would you encourage them to go to university?
Good question. Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage. So I've got 2 children, and I will certainly be doing my absolute best to try and push them in the right direction to get to university. I think that it's really important, though, that when they do, they're young now, 5 and 1, but when they do eventually go to university, that they actually know what they want to do. So it was interesting because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I think that it's difficult to help somebody know exactly what they want to do, but finding those subjects and pushing them in the right direction, I think that's really important for parents to be doing.
Tell you what, my advice would be is if that's what you want, start saving now. Because honestly, it just seems to get more and more expensive. Lovely to talk to you. Thanks very much. It's funny because that's what you always used to hear Americans saying. On any American programme that you would be watching, if the characters in a drama or whatever were discussing...
Saving up for college.
Saving up for college is, yeah. And now we've fallen into the same...
That's more than the same thing. But you don't, a lot of people say went to the University of Life. Some would say they're still at the University of Life. I still am.
Well, yes, absolutely, but you don't have to pay for it. You get paid.
Yeah, that's true. This is very true. I would say as well, if you do go to university, you do get kind of a life education. We were talking about ironing before we came on here, weren't we? And that's where I kind of learned to iron and cook and
Yeah, it's a lot to pay to learn to iron. To go
but have you seen my ironing? Have you seen my ironing?
Well, I think you look quite dapper this morning. Ironing is short before it came on.
Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah,
as ever, GB.
It's funny about the Mickey Mouse degrees, because yesterday I was saying that I remember an interview I did quite a few years ago now, but when they, in one of the universities, I think in the home counties, ran a degree course on golf course management. And everybody was laughing about it at the time and saying, oh, for heaven's sake, what a silly Mickey Mouse degree course. And then I interviewed a girl who had done the degree, and she'd walked into one of the best jobs on earth. She flies all over the world, setting up golf courses for millionaires and whatever all over the place and managing them. And she said it was like Nick was saying earlier, it's one of those very focused degree courses on particular jobs, and she got a wonderful job at the end of it. So it wasn't a Mickey Mouse degree at all.
There you go. Do let us know. Just very quickly, I think there was. I'm pretty sure there was a course or a degree at Edinburgh University in Klingon.
Yes, Stephen was saying that. How could that possibly be?
In a made-up language. There you go. Anyway, GB News at gbnews.uk on that one. It is 7:18. Goodness me. Let's talk about these rising COVID infection levels in the UK. They're up by more than 30% this past week, with an estimated 2.3 million people believed to have the virus.
Yeah, while still shy of the peak infection levels seen earlier this year, the estimated number of infections in the UK is now the highest since late April and the highest yet seen for a summer month.
Yeah.
Joining us now is the Professor of Primary Care and Public Health at Imperial College, Azim Majid. Hello there. Thanks very much for joining us. I mean, in a nutshell, why are we seeing this peak now? Because it seems a little alarming.
Good morning, Anne. There's two factors. One is people are mixing much more now. The summer, people are socialising with each other, going to events, parties and so on. The second factor, which is probably more important, is we're facing new subvariants of Omicron, what are known as BA4 and BA5, which are highly infectious, which spread very easily. And so these new subvariants are really driving the numbers up in the UK and in many other countries as well across the world.
Are they inventing or working on a new vaccine that will be much more focused on the new variant?
So there's a vaccine being tested now which is designed to target Omicron. That's shown good results in the early studies, so hopefully it's available later this year for use across the world. So that should, in theory, provide better protection against Omicron and its subvariants than our current vaccines.
And in the meantime, do you think they should bring back mandatory mask wearing, or at least is your advice to your patients to, maybe put on a mask?
My advice to my patients is, if they're older or vulnerable clinically, to wear a mask when they may be exposed to infection, places like shops and, for example, public transport. The other key thing is vaccination. So many people have not yet been vaccinated in the UK who had a booster. Very important people get their vaccines as well. And if you're unwell, I tell people to isolate and stay at home if they have got symptoms of possible COVID infection. That's also very important as well.
A lot of the people I speak to are a bit worried about the fact that not only can you catch it once now, you seem to be able to catch it repeated times. I know somebody who's had it 3 times. Is there any danger getting it more often than just once?
Yeah, so I've got patients who've had it 3 or 4 times now, so that is the case where I've seen people with repeat infections. The risk is every time you get infected, there is a small risk you may end up with long COVID, for example, or a more severe disease. So, yes, we want to avoid people getting multiple infections if possible. But sadly, we are seeing that now across the UK, unfortunately.
So by the sound of it, it would be wise to actually take a few more precautions.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're, say, politically vulnerable through age or your medical condition, you ought to be sensible about what you do. I think younger people, the risks are much, much lower. But even those people should get vaccinations as well and be sensible as well. So I think we ought to take this condition seriously, make sure we are vaccinated, that we do isolate if unwell, that we wear a mask if we think we're clinically vulnerable in settings where we may be exposed to infection. If we are socialising indoors, make sure the room is not too overcrowded and has good ventilation. So there are steps we can take to try to minimise our risks.
Before we let you go, because I know we're running out of time, though, just thinking about the vaccinations again, time will come for us all to be thinking of flu vaccinations as well. And I know there is a worry about us, falling prey to flu more often now. Will they be rolling out a vaccine for us maybe come autumn that might be a combination where you actually have the flu vaccination at the same time as the latest COVID one?
No, there'll be 2 separate vaccines. So there's no vaccine yet being developed that combines both flu and COVID, so we will get vaccinated against flu, but it means 2 vaccines, 1 for flu and 1 additional booster for COVID rather than a combined vaccine for now.
But you think they will be rolling out another COVID vaccine sort of, end of the summer?
Yeah, for some groups. So people over 65, healthcare workers and younger adults with health problems will get a booster in the autumn or be offered a booster. But not everyone will get a booster this time around. It'll be some groups of people rather than everyone.
OK, Professor, thanks very much indeed for bringing us up to date on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was quite reassuring as well.
It was, but I think, I don't know, I just think maybe why not take a few more precautions, or at least keep up the hand hygiene, maybe wear a mask if you're going to a busy supermarket or sitting on an aeroplane or whatever.
Worth considering. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Coming up, we're going to be so much sport on today. There's Wimbledon, there's Test Rugby, England are playing Australia, New Zealand are playing Ireland, I think, as well. And there's Test Cricket, England playing India at Edgbaston. I don't know how we're going to pack it all in, but we'll try.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It is 7:25.
Yeah, there's lots to talk about, particularly in the world of sport at the moment. I don't know about you, but I've been a bit glued to Wimbledon as well, and that's all happening there as well. Aidan McGee is here with us. Hi.
Nice to see you. How you doing? Morning.
Lovely. I watched a bit of the Wimbledon, and then I watched the King Richard movie.
I've heard it's very good.
The one with Will Smith that he got the Oscar for, where he plays the father of Serena and Venus Williams. Wow, really, really good.
I know.
Really good.
How many Grand Slams between those two? It must be north of 30, I would have thought.
Absolutely.
I'll count them
I think
up.
it's even more than that. Yeah.
I'll count them up
Astonishing.
before next time.
But the movie is so good, and but the Wimbledon yesterday was as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's been interesting. Most of the week they've been reporting low attendances, so they've not. I mean, the show courts have been very well attended, as you might expect, but the ground passes have not really sold. Now there are reasons for that. The Press Association went out and interviewed some of the punters in the queue, and they said, well, it's probably cost of living crisis. It could be the price of tickets. Sometimes the resale value is not as is a little bit high, considering maybe it gets to 5 o'clock. It looks a bit steep. But Roger Federer not being there is a huge miss as well. I mean, the commercial draw of that guy. I mean, even compared to Djokovic and Nadal and even Murray is enormous, and he attracts a lot of international visitors as well. So
that's such a shame because if you actually do go and you wander around the outside courts,
yes, absolutely,
you don't have to have a centre court or a number one ticket to have a fantastic day.
You can see superstars warming up and knocking up, and that's an education in itself.
They should pay Federer to just walk around.
I know, just use personality, do a few selfies.
Yeah.
It's a pity he doesn't need the money, isn't it? Really. But no. Having said that, with the British interest this weekend, they're hoping that middle Saturday they'll get a big boost in attendances. I mean, we've got some great stories going on. We saw Cameron Norrie getting through yesterday to the fourth round for the first time in his career. In the women's draw as well, we got Katie Bolter from Leicester. She's looking to tap into the spirit of Leicester City in 2016, winning the league at a 5,000 to 1 shot. She's also taken inspiration from Emma Raducanu as well, who went out earlier in the week. We've got Heather Watson as well. I mean, Heather Watson's 30.
First time she's ever got through to the second week.
That's right. I mean, her breakthrough year was probably 2012-13. So in common with most of these tips that we're talking about today, Liam Brody's 28, Cameron Norrie's 26. I saw Cameron Norrie play at Eastbourne 3 years ago, and to say he's a work in progress is probably a bit of an understatement, because I couldn't really see how he was going to make the jump to getting number 12 in the world, and obviously he's number 9 in seeded as well. We're seeing a bit of action here just now. That's Cam Norrie yesterday. He was very, very dominant in that game as well. So the draw on his side looks quite good as well. It looks quite favourable. But I mean, Katie Bolter's 25. These aren't breakthrough acts. These are people who've worked at their game. And that's the thing about tennis now. You can have the natural ability, but you've got to work so hard. John McEnroe was talking about it last night. He looked at Cam Norrie 4 years ago and said, look, I couldn't have seen him being even in the top 30. But you just work and work and work. Yeah, he absolutely has. And
there's a great story I read about Cameron Norrie, that apparently he was in a bar very recently, and the bartender said to him, do you ever watch tennis? To him. And he said, yeah, I watch it a little bit. And he went, you really look like Cameron Norrie. and then as he went to walk out, he went, I am Cameron Norrie. And the bartender went, what? But it just shows that even though he's the best tennis player, male tennis player in Britain, he's still not that well known.
No, he's not. Well, he didn't grow up in Britain. I mean, he was actually born in South Africa, and then his family suffered quite a nasty burglary when he was 3 years old, so they decamped off to New Zealand. He's not seen his family properly for about 2.5 years now because of the COVID situation, because it's not exactly a hop, skip and a jump from New Zealand. But they were there yesterday. His mother was there to see him yesterday win. And as I say, the draw could open out. I mean, Djokovic would lie in wait maybe around about the semi-final mark. I think I've got that right. So it's a real story in the making. And as I say, he didn't really look as if his game was lent itself to grass. But this is how players adapt. You know, when you can practice all year, and I guess the pressure's off because the crowds haven't been there. You can really work at your game. And I couldn't see him going much further than the second round this year. But he's done really well. And as I say,
I think it's lovely the fact that even though we lost Emma Raducanu and Andy Murray so early on, there are still British hopes to watch out for.
2 in the men's, 2 in the women's. I don't recall that happening in my lifetime.
No.
Not in the singles, anyway. I mean, we've had a couple of hopes. I mean, Jamie Murray's still involved as well with the mixed doubles. He's with Venus Williams. They came through yesterday as well. So going into the second week...
He's playing with Venus Williams?
Yes, he is,
I missed that.
Yeah, he is. They won yesterday. So I can't remember which court that was on. It was one of the outside courts, but they're through.
Okay.
So, I mean, Jamie Murray's a vast experienced doubles player, as it is. Venus has played more doubles in recent years as their career in singles has kind of wound down a little bit. But yeah, as I say, they've got some battles ahead. But when we talked about Andy Murray, didn't we, going into the tournament, when we were talking about him plotting his route to the final and how the draw looked as if it had opened up. I mean, don't get me wrong, Djokovic is in action tomorrow. Nadal, I think, is on court today.
I was just going to say who's on court today, because I'm planning an afternoon in front of my friend. I'm going to stay with my friend, and she's got one of those enormous televisions.
Oh, really?
I mean, like, huge. And a great big sofa in front of it, and I'm planning on just kipping out on that.
Well, Liam Brody's an interesting one. Liam Brody's an interesting one because he's up against an Australian hope called Alex de Minaur, but Alex de Minaur is the boyfriend of Katie Bolter, who we mentioned a moment ago.
Really?
So he said he was asked yesterday, who do you expect her to support? And he says, well, I think she's probably got to sit in boyfriend's boxes, and she kind of has to.
A couple.
Yeah, exactly. So that's good as well. And then we had last night as well, just to sort of finish off, we had England under-19s winning the Euros. So they went into extra time. They beat Israel 3-1 in Slovakia. Hell of a result, that really. And we think back to 5 years ago when England done it. And the under-19s, and it's launched a career around Ramsdale, the current Arsenal goalkeeper, Mason Mount at Chelsea, since won the Champions League, Ryan Sessegnon and Reece James at Chelsea as well. So that was a real feather in the cap for them.
Yeah, and there's so much. I don't know if we've got time to fit it all in. There's the British Grand Prix. There's Test cricket happening in Edgbaston.
Absolutely. I mean, Silverstone's amazing. I mean, that's going to attract 400. Well, we had practice yesterday, 400,000 people over 3 days. I mean, it's still such a huge draw. You look at Silverstone course. It's not one of the kind of new age ones, the space age courses. It's one of the or tracks. It's one of the ones that's quite old. It's a little bit decrepit, but it retains its charm. It's a little bit like somewhere like Fulham Football Club in the Premier League. It's not. It doesn't. It's a bit unmade. The ground is a little bit old-fashioned, but because of where it is, it retains its charm. And the draw there is amazing. And Lewis Hamilton had a really good day yesterday. Finished second in practice. We've got a qualifying session today, and then the real thing tomorrow. But as I say, huge crowds there, and he's had a difficult week with all the stuff that was said about him, particularly by Nelson Piquet and, of course, by Bernie Ecclestone as well. But he's managed to move on from it. And he's concentrating on the race now, and he's doing all right.
Yeah. Great
Good.
stuff.
Excellent.
Lovely.
Yeah,
I'll
great.
catch you later on.
Indeed, thanks
Thank
very much
you, Aileen.
indeed. And we've
Cheers.
got lots coming up. We've got the newspaper review, obviously, with Dawn Neeson and Pete Price. We'll catch up on the bee situation with them and rats or something. Pigeons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bees and pigeon update to come. Yeah.
And also meeting the man who's running a marathon a day and he's halfway through.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio,
On digital, absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
we embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Anne and Paul. It is 7:35. Should we go through the papers?
Yeah, let's go through the papers now. Try and do anything to warm up now that the air conditioning seems to be turning this place into a fridge again this morning. I've got my thermal vest on and everything. Anyway, here we go on. All right, let's go through the papers here. Are we going to go through the front pages? No. We're going to do Pete Price and Dawn Neeson are with us and have a look inside, or at least at what your choices are. And Dawn, you've been looking at the COVID infections rising again.
I have, and it's a subject I really hoped we wouldn't have to talk about at length anymore, but it's in every single paper, and this is infections have risen by a third in a week again, according to official data. You've been discussing it this morning, I know, with various experts. So around 2.3 million people in the UK now recorded with COVID, up more than 500,000 from the previous week. And the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation have recommended that over 65s, adult care homes, residents and frontline health workers should get another booster jab as of September. There is also advice from some professors that we go back to wearing the high quality masks in crowded places, indoors. And it just feels like we're just now going backwards again. It's like this loop of COVID never going away. And I just have to ask, are we going to have boosters pretty much every year now?
Well, yeah, we have boosters for flu, so I don't think it's a bad thing. What I love to know is where they get the figures from. I don't know where they pluck these figures from, how they know.
This was a week in June.
Yeah, this is the Office for National Statistics.
Yeah.
Right, but I still don't know where they get the figures from, because I know 4 people have had COVID recently, and it's like flu. They're at home, they have their test, they then go back to work, just like flu. One of my friends has had 3 times had COVID. I mean, it is like flu.
The worry
do they have underlying health conditions?
One of them has, yeah. Is only young. Yeah.
I know somebody young who's had it 3 times and hasn't had any problems. But what worries me most is the fact that the doctors are saying the more often you get it, the increased likelihood is of you getting long COVID, which is the real worry. It's almost more of the worry now, long COVID.
Is that scientific?
Yeah, we've had two doctors saying it.
Because that is the worrying thing, isn't it? Because, I mean, you say it's like the flu, but you get the flu, you recover, you get back to normal life. But if there is that chance that you might get long COVID, I mean, I had it a year ago now, and I guess I could have long COVID because my sense of taste and smell have never been the same since.
Really?
I mean,
Oh,
it's still
wow.
just slightly coming back now. I didn't even get ill with COVID, though. I mean, I didn't even sneeze or cough or nothing, not a single symptom, apart from losing the sense of the smell and taste. And so long COVID, it's still not great.
I was very ill. I've had it twice, and I was very ill. I've had 3 injections, just put in my 4th injection. My friends are now being offered the 5th injection in September.
So are you worried about it then, Pete?
When I had it, the first time I had it was when nobody was getting it. I was one of the first people I knew who got it.
Right.
And I was never frightened of dying. I wasn't well because I've always had problems with my chest, especially after I've done panto every year. I'm always exhausted. But I was really poorly. I mean, and the second time I was really poorly again. I hope that that's given me more resistance.
Natural immunity.
Yeah, I've had my injections. But we always say it, but we forget how many people die of flu. You know, hundreds of thousands.
The good news about this story, and you don't want to terrorise people, but the good news is that even though infections are rising, deaths are not rising, and admissions to ICU units aren't rising as well. So there is good news to it. So it's not like we want to panic people or people should be worried.
That's why I say, you know, people are getting it, having the test at home, and then going back to work.
And a lot of people who are going to hospital are going for other reasons and then testing positive.
So the hospital statistics
So we've got to be very
different.
careful not to scare people.
OK, Pete, tell us about older carers in urgent need.
Yeah, this is a sad story in the Express. More than 1.8 million over 60s are unpaid carers and they're totally exhausted. This is all according to the charity Age Concern. And it's playing on their health. Now, the amazing thing about this story is these people are together, they're brothers, sisters, they're married couples. These are the people that never complain about being carers. These are the ones that really need help. Yeah. They never complain. They're their loved ones. They married and they took their vows and they're together and they are exhausted. We hear about young carers, but everyone forgets about the older people.
And they very often don't define themselves as carers.
No, they don't.
Because they're just, related.
Yeah, these are a different breed of people. It's like my mother when she was alive. She never got benefits because she was proud. These people are proud and we need to make an example about this. There's a lot of people out there saving the government a great deal of money and the NHS.
They're saving, but they could also be getting some support.
They just want a little bit of help.
And I think that problem is only going to get worse because that latest data on the census showed that the population is getting older.
Yeah, we're an aging
and it's going to continue.
And of course, the other problem is, the pandemic. These people are the ones that are still in isolation. A lot of people are still frightened of going out, and you see them with masks on in the street, and they are still terrified. I think it's a sad story.
Dawn, tell us about the children bombarded by junk food promotions.
Yeah, the opposite end of the age scale here. This is in the Daily Mail, and this is reporting on a survey by the Journal of Public Health, and researchers have found that young children, very young children, preschool children, are being bombarded with junk food in TV shows. I mean, they use a picture of...
They've got a picture of the Cookie Monster there. I object to that. He was a role model growing up.
Does that mean you've got addiction to cookies? She said, peering over her glasses.
What was your role monster for?
Role monster. I like that.
The study has been led by a team from the University of Nottingham, analysed 3 days' worth of children's programmes on various channels, not just the main ones. And they include the likes of Fireman Sam, Teletubbies, and the team recorded each time things like sweets and sugary cereals and crisps appeared on screen. And in some cases, it's up to 72% of episodes have some subliminal almost reference to, the bad stuff, the sweets and the sugar and stuff that the kids should not be eating. So we make all this big fuss about banning advertising for these things. Meanwhile, the actual programmes the kids are watching are full of it.
Well, it's interesting because we were talking about this yesterday. Ofcom are apparently under pressure to relax their rules on this sort of thing.
What?
Which would mean that we'd get more advertising breaks every quarter of an hour or 10 minutes or so, like in America. But also, they would relax their restrictions on product placement, which again then means that children's television, as well as others, will have branded materials just placed.
Just as long as it's fruit and healthy stuff. But I mean, you've got 1 in 4 UK adults, more than 1 in 5 children in the final year of primary school are obese. And we're messaging them with all this stuff.
And let these companies, let them advertise all they want and take all the money off them and give it to the dental service. Because right now we have a major problem in this country.
And nobody seems to be addressing it.
No one at all. We're losing dentists hand over fist from the NHS going to private practices. You can't get in because they're too busy. And this is all because their teeth are a disgrace.
Right,
These are my
we've
own
only got a minute left, so let's go to something that tickles my fancy. I don't know whether this is torn. 3 million pets in the UK have taken cannabis.
Well, this is great. I love this story. I mean, it does make you laugh. And I'm not sure if I'm meant to laugh or not, but it's in the Times, and basically it's medicinal cannabis. It's the CBD. And owners that are using it, quite legally, by the way, to treat their problems, are actually giving it to their dogs, in particular, to treat things like arthritis and anxiety.
Oh.
And it's quite funny. And they've got this dog here that looks remarkably chilled.
Yeah.
In the picture. It's a 4-year-old Eurasia. I don't know what that is, but it's been given CBD by her owner, who said that the dog has been much more calmer and can cope with loud noises now, in particular around firework night. It's just like so. The dog is like,
she had a consultation with the dog to find out all these mood swings.
The dog said, "Look, hey man, I just need to chill out."
Just give me a second with this joint.
I would definitely check with your vet first.
Yeah.
We've got to move on now. Thanks very much indeed to you both. We'll see you again in an hour, yeah?
Yeah. It is 7:44. As we mentioned earlier, Chris Pincher has been suspended as a Conservative MP following allegations of...
groping and drunkenness.
Yeah, which emerged earlier this week. But what does this mean in terms of holding our politicians to account and making sure standards are upheld by them? We can speak now to the Shadow Minister for the Armed Forces, Luke Pollard, who joins us. Morning, Luke. First of all, your reaction then to this developing story.
Well, I think it's yet another example of Tory sleaze that has been poorly handled by the Prime Minister. Politics really should reflect the best of our values as a country, and I'm afraid what we're seeing at the moment is yet another Conservative MP after Conservative MP doing something utterly appalling and seemingly being protected by Downing Street. If the Prime Minister had an ounce of decency, he would have withdrawn the whip immediately, not waited to see if he could sit it out to reward this arch-loyalist with that little bit more protection. I'm afraid it really stinks. And this is why we need to clear up our politics, clean out this awful type of sleaze that we are seeing engulf the government, restore public standards so people can look to politics and see, yes, that's the country's values being exercised. But at the moment, it looks pretty grubby. It really does.
Arch-loyalist he may be, but he's also a human being, and surely there should be some system where his problems could be addressed and he could be cared for better than just being condemned.
Well, I take the view that Parliament should be free of sexual predators. It should be a safe place for people to work, and I'm afraid it's not at the moment. What we need is to strengthen the independent processes that we have, to create a culture where people are able to come forwards to raise concerns about another member of staff or a member of Parliament, knowing that those concerns will be understood, respected, and their confidentiality respected. But it seems at the moment that we've got a culture where, depending where you are, you will be protected or shunned. It doesn't seem to make much sense to me that we had a by-election only a few days ago to replace a Conservative MP who is watching pornography in the Commons, but yet we don't seem to have that same type of rigour, that same type of action from the government for a Conservative member of Parliament that allegedly has sexually assaulted 2 men. I mean, this doesn't seem right. That's why we do need due process. We do need to make Parliament a safe place for everyone to work. But to do that, we've got to change the culture, and that means changing the people at the top who seem to protect sexual predators, who don't take allegations seriously. And that's why we need change and reform.
Moving on, Luke, the Prime Minister's been at NATO this week talking about wanting to increase defence spending. I was just wondering, what would the Labour Party do in terms of meeting, NATO commitments on spending if they were in government?
Well, Labour's commitment to NATO is unshakable, and we've said to government in the past, including at the recent spending review, that if they increase defence spending to match the seriousness of the challenges that we now face, especially due to Russia's criminal invasion of Ukraine, they would get our full support. But what we need to see them do is also reboot the defence plans, because we still have a government planning to cut 10,000 soldiers from the army over the next 3 years, to cut 10% of our reserve forces. That's not a decision that should be taken at the moment. It's an embarrassment. We do need to make sure that Britain is strongly contributing to a deterrence of Russia, supporting our allies at the same time. But that does mean, I think, rethinking defence spending and rebooting defence plans. Sadly, I don't think the government is going far enough in both those respects at the moment.
So just to clarify, would you meet that 2.5% increase in defence spending, and would you scrap the cuts to the numbers of troops?
Well, Labour's not in favour of the cuts to our armed forces. As an MP who represents a military city, I represent Plymouth with the Western Europe's largest naval dockyard. I've been strongly opposed to defence cuts that we've seen. That's why we need to reboot those plans. But we don't know when the next general election is going to be. We don't know what the level of spending on Ukraine will be at that point, although the government does enjoy our full support in the measures they're taking to support our allies in Ukraine. But more Tory defence cuts is not the answer to keep our country and our allies safe at the point where we see Russian aggression threatening our allies and committing atrocities in Ukraine.
It's interesting because we've been showing our viewers this morning the new army recruitment video. I don't know if you've seen it, but very clearly the message from the army is they're saying it's all very well to sink money into new technology. They show a robot, running through a battlefield. It's all very well to sink money into cyber warfare or all of those sort of things. But what we, the army, still need are human beings, human soldiers. It's a very clear recruitment video for human beings. It seems to be at odds with what the government is saying. Would you agree? What do you think of it?
Well, for Britain to be a top-tier defence power, which is what I think we all want Britain to remain, we not only need to invest in the finest new technologies, but that also means sorting out the pretty appalling procurement system that creates so much inefficiency and waste. We also need people to view a career in the armed forces as a career of choice. And I have to say, our armed forces are the very best in the world, but we do need to continue to get people to join up. Each and every year, we see people join the armed forces and we see people leave the armed forces. That's a normal churn. That is important, that people look at those careers, realising you can earn not only a good wage, but also learn skills that will support you for the rest of your life in the armed forces. But that's why the cuts to the armed forces are such a morale-sapping part of kicking them in the face, effectively. We don't support...
Oh, we've lost Luke Pollard there. That's a shame. Because interestingly, on that point, we've already had quite a lot of your views. Thank you very much indeed. Andy Linton says, we have a volunteer armed forces that is renowned as one of the best in the world. We instill an ethos of courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity, loyalty and selfless commitment. Perhaps, though, we should be paid commensurate with our commitment of putting our lives on the line so that our citizens have the freedom to do and say what they want to do. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, very
strong
interesting.
point.
And Henry says, when you consider the terrible way veterans are treated by the government, and there's never a senseless war that our government isn't eager to get involved with, from Ukraine to Iraq to Libya to Syria, Afghanistan, etc., there is simply no good reason to join the army. Interesting. gbviews@gbnews.uk if you want to feed back to us on that one.
Yeah, we'd like to hear your views. Please get in touch.
Yeah, it is 7:51.
Now, I wonder if you've kept up with your New Year's resolution. It's a long time ago, 6 months ago now, isn't it? Our next guest, though, set himself one of the hardest challenges he could possibly have done, running 365 consecutive marathons. That, of course, is one a day.
Yeah, Gary McKee's hoping to raise £1 million for Macmillan Cancer Support and Hospice at Home West Cumbria. Today marks Gary reaching his halfway point with 183 marathons behind him. Only 182 to go. Morning to you, Gary. Thanks for speaking to us. First of all, how are you feeling?
I feel good, feel strong, ready to go.
Have you really? Seriously, I can't quite get my head around it. Run a marathon a day?
Every single day, I never missed.
How are you doing it, bearing in mind some of us, myself included, never run marathons because we're too scared to run even one?
Yeah, I think once you've made your commitment and you've said what you're going to do, it's just a case of rocking up and doing it. I've had a lot of community support as people comes with me to run or cycle. I have somebody at the halfway point who makes a cup of tea and a bit of cake, and runners love cake. So it's just one of those things that you get into the routine of doing it, and that's it, you go.
It must have been a long 6 months and you've still got more to go. I mean, but you're still up about it. You're still looking forward to every day another marathon.
I think you get into the groove of seeing your Just Giving page going up and how many people that you're helping, and you just want to sustain that. It'll go on till the end of the year, regardless of what the weather or what comes into your life.
Yeah, your video's freezing a little, but I'll just get a question in so you can answer this one as well if you can hear me. So you're in Cumbria at the moment and it's nearly 8 o'clock in the morning. When are you going to set off on today's marathon and where are you going to run to?
Yeah, I set off every day. I use the same route at 8 o'clock in the morning. I run on a disused cycle path. No cars there, lots of people walking, give you a smile and a bit of encouragement. And it's beautiful. You can see over to the lake trails, and it encourages people to get out. I like to say there's loads of school children joins me, getting people active and moving, and the whole community gets behind you to support you.
Yeah. And you're in Cumbria now. Where did you start and where will you finish? Because you've still got the other half to go.
Yeah, so all the marathons have been done on the same route. It starts and finishes at my house. The cycle path that I use is just a couple of 100 metres from the front door. It just means that there's no hassle with, I know exactly where I'm going to be. People know where I'm at if they want to join me. It finishes at home. I can get showered, bite to eat, and then go straight to work. So it all works for me. That's why I don't need to change it, really.
Right. And do you listen to any music while you're running?
No, I never ever listen to music. There's plenty of people usually with us and we're talking about something or just getting on with it, really.
And the aim, of course, is to raise money. How are you doing?
At the moment, I think there's about £130,000 being raised. There's lots of people putting their own events on to try and help out. And you tend to find that the money comes in towards the end when things are looking successful. So we are doing really, really well. It's raising the awareness for the charities too. They're pleased, obviously, in what we're doing, signposting people to those charities. So it is all coming together.
And sorry, just before we let you go, what's your best time so far for the entire marathon?
On this campaign, I think we ran a 3:24 earlier on, but they're all generally under 4 hours.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's why you've still got time to go to work at the end of it. My goodness, you're amazing. Well done. And good luck on the fundraising. It's very important, obviously, for you. And contact us a bit later on when you're 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Gary. Really appreciate it. Great to speak to you.
I don't know many major athletes who would do a marathon a day. I mean, well, he obviously is a major athlete, but, you know, famous athletes who specialise in marathon running surely don't do a marathon a day.
Didn't Eddie Izzard do? Didn't he do a marathon a day or 50 marathons in 50 days? Not a marathon a day for a year though. A whole year. So many more questions.
His poor old feet, his poor old knees, the pounding on the legs,
definitely.
on the hips. Wow.
Yeah, great guy though, very inspirational. I'm still not doing it though.
No,
7:56.
Tried it? No way.
Yeah. More to come, including the government considering bringing new laws for second home owners. So more on that after this.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England. Slowly working eastwards, but much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the Highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well, and generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. But it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon. And certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 2nd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with me, Anne and Paul.
We are live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here's what you're waking up to this Saturday morning.
COVID infections in the UK have jumped by 32% in a week. 2.3 million infections were reported in 1 week in the middle of June, representing one of the highest leaps on record. We're going to be finding out just shortly what is the cause behind this increase.
Also this morning, Chris Pincher has been suspended as a Tory MP following allegations of groping at a private members' club. The now independent MP is still under investigation by Parliament's behaviour watchdog. But what fallout could this have for the government?
And the Army have launched a new recruitment drive with a focus on robots. They say that machines will never be able to do the job that real-life soldiers will do. We've already had lots of views on that, but do get in touch. Let us know your thoughts.
Yep, drop us a line. As ever, we do love hearing from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yep, or you can tweet us at GBNews. Now, interestingly, and I don't really know why, although it's just sort of come up in conversation, we've been talking about, first of all, bees. And if you've got any good bee stories, let us know, because Pete Price, who's in at the moment reviewing our newspapers, he'll be here in about half an hour, has had bees sort of take over the windows outside his bedroom.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a very expensive job moving them on. Then we started talking about pigeons, and you've got a pigeon story for us.
Yeah, there's a story in the papers this morning about pigeons. That's why we were talking about pigeons. It just so happened that when I was at Downing Street yesterday, there was a pigeon stuck in the netting of the Foreign Office opposite number 10. And so some members of...
Oh, so this is your video, is it?
This is my video. That's why it's so poorly shot.
This is Downing Street.
And that is a cameraman from another media organisation using the poles that they have to put the lights on, trying to get the pigeon out there.
So it was stuck in netting.
It was stuck in the netting at the top, and then he didn't manage to do it with the poles. So I climbed up that gate to where.
You're joking?
No, I shinned up the gate, and I tried to reach him with my hand to unhook said pigeon, but he or she was too much entangled in the netting. So really, we needed a pair of scissors, and I was.
What happened to the pigeon?
So I climbed down, and they just said, we've called, someone's going to come along with a pair of scissors and cut it out, but it was still there when I left a few hours later.
Oh.
It wasn't moving.
I had that problem at home where the pigeon got stuck in the netting by my trees. I've been trying to stop them nesting in the trees, and in the end, the netting I'd put up, pigeon got stuck in the netting. Yeah. And then I was thinking, what do I do about it? Do I rescue the pigeon, or do I just let it die? What do you do? So in the end, I rescued it, and it took forever, because it was driving the dog mad, apart from anything else, because it was flapping all over the place. Yeah. And I thought, I can't just leave it to die. That's just
no.
So I cut it down, and I took it down, and then its wing and everything had got completely caught up in netting. It took hours to untangle it from the netting. And in the end, I did manage to do it, and I let it go, and it sort of hopped off. It looked very flustered, and it hopped off. And in the end, it sort of managed to fly enough to get into the next-door neighbour's garden. And then it hopped off, because I was watching it to see what happened, to see if it would actually fly. And then it hopped off into the road and got smashed into by a lorry. So it... You know, I'd gone to all that
out of the frying pan and into the fire.
So sad pigeon stories.
Sad pigeon stories, yeah. Yeah, and as far as the pigeon goes at Downing Street, it just wasn't moving when I left, but maybe it was still alive. Maybe they cut it out, I don't know.
Let's hope it's so. But it just shows it's not... There's a big pigeon controversy as well in Stonehenge, have you heard? Because there's gaps, obviously, between the sort of horizontal stones and some of the up stones. And because it's not pigeons, actually, it's jackdaws. The jackdaws at Stonehenge are quite famous. They've nested there forever. But apparently, obviously, what they produce is beginning to hack away at the stones. And so some of the protection people at Stonehenge have put netting up in those little crevices to stop the jackdaws nesting there.
So they could get caught in the netting?
And, yeah, they could get caught in the netting, but also, I mean, people who are into Stonehenge are saying this is wrong. You know, Stonehenge has been there a long time, and so have the jackdaws, and we shouldn't be interfering in natural processes.
Indeed.
Interesting,
anyway,
isn't it?
You're up to date with all the latest bird news here on GB News, but no, seriously, if you've got any stories like that...
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you,
please. gbnews.uk. 6 minutes past 8. Let's talk about these rising COVID infection levels in the UK, up by 30% this past week, with an estimated 2.3 million people believed to have the virus.
Now, that number, although sounds alarming, is still shy of the peak infection levels seen earlier this year. The estimated number of infections in the UK is the highest, though, since late April, and the highest yet seen for a summer month. We're joined now by Dr. Bharat Pankania, who is a senior clinical lecturer at the University of Exeter Medical School and an expert in communicable disease control. Thank you so much for joining us. What is causing this peak in COVID cases, and should it give ordinary people like us concern?
So let's deal with the first one, which is why have we got this rise in number of cases? Well, as normal activities have resumed, i.e. socializing, going out, meeting people. And on top of that, we have a variant of Omicron. This is often termed as BA4 and BA5. So by variants, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, I would say slight change in shape. So with that slight change in shape, it finds it easier to infect people. And as it finds it easier to infect people, we have had this surge in number of cases.
Getting out and socialising more, because it is, I suppose, summer.
It is. And whilst our case numbers are rising, of course, they're not at the 2021 peak levels. And what we need to have is that watchfulness. So as you asked about, should we be concerned? Well, my answer is yes, we need to be watchful, because with the rising number of cases, there's always a lag period with hospital admissions, and then there is a lag period with deaths. At the moment, what is happening is that whilst the case numbers have gone up and hospitalizations have gone up and also ITU numbers have gone up, in other words, people needing respiratory support, it's not at the levels that we had in 2021. And why we are in a better place today is because the vaccines that we have been giving have been doing the protecting job of preventing severe disease. Obviously, it doesn't prevent infections, but it does look like it prevents severe disease.
So how worried should we be about this? How worried are you?
Well, it's watchfulness, because if it has gone up in summer, then what will happen in autumn is something to be very aware of and watchful of and to be prepared for. Now, my way forward would be as follows. So instead of sitting there saying, I'm worried, what can we do? Well, what can we do is keep our momentums up, which is protect the vulnerable people, protect key workers, protect essential workers, and all of them. At the moment, they can only be protected one way properly, which is the vaccine. At a higher level, I would say, have we reached the time now when we need to reformulate the vaccine that would be given out as boosters come autumn? So I'm veering towards, do we need a reformulated vaccine?
Are they working on that now?
I'm sure they are. And you see, what it is, the vaccines were created with the Wuhan strain. And then after Wuhan, we had Alpha, Beta, Delta, Omicron, and now BA4, BA5 versions of Omicron. And so there is that little drift from the original Wuhan strain. So we now need to catch up and say, well, look, this is what is circulating in the majority. Let us give you immunity against this. When we give people immunity, we give immunity and it works across the board. In other words, it protects against Delta, Omicron, Alpha, Beta, etc. But the further away we keep on going, the less and less protection is possible.
So bottom line advice for everybody watching at the moment is when a vaccine becomes available to you, and boosters are available to those particularly vulnerable, but when one becomes available to your group, go get it, yes?
Absolutely, Anne, and that's spot on, because apart from the vaccines, we've got masks, ventilation, etc. Those are also good measures, but we know that the vaccines work, and when it is your turn, don't delay, do get it, especially if you are in the vulnerable group.
Dr. Bharat Pankania from Exeter University, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning. Really appreciate your insight. It is 11 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening this morning.
Well, yeah, questions are being raised over why the Prime Minister delayed suspending the Tory whip from MP Chris Pincher following those allegations of sexual misconduct. He is now being investigated by Parliament's watchdog after being accused of drunkenly groping two men at a private members' club. That was on Wednesday.
Elsewhere this morning, the government is considering extra long-term mortgages on family homes as part of plans to ease the housing crisis. It means people could be able to buy more expensive properties with no expectation of completing the repayments during their lifetime. The house and any outstanding debt could then be passed on to their kids.
Searches for bowel cancer symptoms on the NHS website have gone up tenfold following the death of Dame Deborah James this week. Health Service figures show there were just over 23,000 hits to the webpage after she died, and that was up from 2,000 the day before.
The Royal College of Nursing claims its staff were left at risk during COVID without proper guidance, effective testing or protective equipment. It's calling for nurses to be fully involved in the government's inquiry into the pandemic.
And Age UK says 4 in 5 older carers worry whether they can keep providing care. The charity claims that COVID and cuts to social care have shifted the burden onto those who look after loved ones, making their lives impossible. So they're urging the government to improve benefit payments and access to counselling services.
British drivers were handed a record 8.6 million parking fines in a year for leaving their car in places like shopping centres and service stations. The DVLA says an average of 23,000 tickets were issued every day from April 2021 to March this year. The government's Levelling Up department says it's determined to end rip-off parking practices. It is 13 minutes past 8. To combat a huge rise in short-term rentals on websites such as Airbnb and Booking.com, the government is thinking about whether to make owners register second homes and even make them subject to surprise inspection visits.
Would you welcome that if you own a second home? Because currently, owners of second homes in England can avoid paying council tax and access small business rates relief by declaring an intention to let the property out to holidaymakers.
Ministers are now looking at whether holiday lets should be registered. This comes amid concern that inflated property prices are pushing established residents out of many areas.
Well, let's talk to Cunliffe Baker, a property expert and broadcaster who joins us now in the studio. Hello. I must say, just reading that out, I didn't know that actually people who own a second home don't have to pay council tax on it.
I know, it's a weird loophole that the government, thankfully, are going to be closing. There's other tax loopholes that they're going to be closing. The way that income on second homes is counted or is dealt with in terms of tax, and it's more efficient actually if it's a holiday home rather than if it's a second home that you're renting out permanently.
But now the government are sort of planning on snooping in and asking you about how you run the second home, you know, whether you just run it for you or whether you let it on Airbnb and things like that. They're going to poke their nose into people who own second homes.
They are, but I think it's really important that they do that, because what they're actually trying to do is make sure that second homes that are let for holidays are held to the same health and safety standards as hotels and holiday operators. The last thing we would want is somebody being harmed by a faulty gas or electrical appliance. So it's kind of about levelling up that the effects of health and safety.
Is there a problem with that? I mean, anecdotally, when I'm looking on Airbnb for somewhere to stay, I do see some very... I remember seeing a car. Someone had parked a car in a field once and they were letting it out on Airbnb.
Yeah.
A car? As a place to go and stay?
Yeah, you could go and stay in this person's car, like a derelict car in their field.
Fun.
You do see some odd things on there. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Not necessarily. So if you go to a hotel, you know that the gas appliances have been tested, you know the electrical appliances have been tested, the kettles. You don't necessarily know that if it's just an Airbnb, and that's a real problem. And that's dangerous. Interestingly, in Spain, probably 5 years ago now, they brought in similar legislation after the hotel industry said, look, this is unfair, because with Airbnb now individuals can compete with us, but it's not a level playing field because we have to stick to all these health and safety standards.
I mean, you also hear lots of nightmare stories about, don't you, about, you know, you're living in a nice residential area and suddenly you weren't aware of it, and then you become aware that next door's house is being let as a holiday B&B. Nobody asked you, and suddenly next door are throwing raucous hen parties in it, or, you know, goodness knows. In other words, you're not living next door to the neighbour, the residential neighbour you thought you were.
Yeah, and that speaks to community, and that's really, really important, especially in some of these, in areas, you know, on the coast or in Yorkshire, you know, beautiful areas of beauty, where people are changing the community effectively, and that is something that the government needs to look at. But thankfully...
Well, you see, that's what worries me. On the one hand, I can understand you get whole towns, particularly the prettiest coastal towns, where the community is being wrecked because so many of those houses don't belong to people who live there. They belong to people who live elsewhere, either let them or just let them empty, or, let them stay empty. But on the other hand, they've got every right to do that, haven't they? I mean, if you're rich enough to own a second home, why shouldn't you?
Well, they have got every right to do that. And more importantly, tourism is a valid and important industry. So that brings jobs, that brings money. When people go to these places, Whitstable or Padstow, they go to restaurants, they go to pubs, they buy things in shops. So it is important for the local economy. But I think the issue is, particularly those places that I've just mentioned, have probably gone too far the other way. And I think there needs to be a kind of... The government needs to look at areas individually and maybe actually devolve powers to individual areas so that they can decide whether they want to attract...
But does that mean, like I said, if you're lucky enough to have a little cottage somewhere on the south coast overlooking the beach or something, does that mean that somebody somewhere, either from the local council or even central government, is going to say, we're going to come round, we expect you to be there, we're going to ask you intrusive questions about whether you really live there, who you let it to, who you're allowed to come and stay?
No, I think what will actually happen, it will just be a register. And what they'll be asking people to do is to be honest about, is this something, is this your second home, your holiday home? And on occasion, do you let it to other people? Or is this genuinely a kind of commercial hospitality enterprise? And if it is, then we need you to make sure that the health and safety is at a certain level, and we need to pay the right tax.
And what's the definition of occasionally?
Well,
how do you define that at all?
Well, quite simply, somebody in the government needs to pick a figure and say, an amount of days per annum.
Are you happy with somebody in government making that decision? I mean, I'm not rich enough to own a second house. I would really like to. But if I did, I don't know whether... I think I might resent somebody coming in and asking me too many questions about it.
Yeah, and look, I understand that, but I think there needs to be, a figure put to it. Otherwise, how else are we going to distinguish between, people? And and there will be some people who are in that middle bit who are a bit, who feel hard done by. But I think, it's really important because we've got to protect areas, but we've got to protect the tourism industry.
Does that then mean also that if you fancy buying the little country cottage or something, the estate agent who sells it to you is going to ask you those sort of questions and say, you can't qualify for this if it's going to be a second home?
Yeah, I think that's probably fine. Because, and I think that's what I was talking about earlier, about devolving powers to local areas. So there's certain areas that could say, look, actually, we want some more second homes in, people here, because, these homes are empty, young flight, because some of these places are amazing and they're beautiful to go to on holiday, but they're not necessarily a place that you'd want to live all year round because of the remoteness.
And of course, it's pushing up the price of the properties in that area. Which is pricing locals out. So, one aspect of it is that it makes it more affordable for locals.
Absolutely, and that's why it's important that the government give devolve power to the local areas to decide for themselves.
Fascinating, isn't it? It always is when you talk about property.
Yeah, it is.
It's what you fancy doing yourself, and then where you don't want government necessarily to poke their nose in.
Cheers, Kinley.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much indeed. If you own a second property, and you don't have to be vastly rich to do it, I know people who just have a little place somewhere or a little flat somewhere near the sea. If you do, what do you think about having to answer too many questions about what your intentions are for it? Love to hear.
GBViews at gbnews.uk. It's 20 minutes past 8.
And it's 50 years since
the
Gay Liberation Front marched through central London demanding equality, visibility and acceptance. Around 500 people took to the streets on the 1st of July, 1972.
One could not have foreseen just how far gay rights would come in 50 years, nor how far the march itself would grow in confidence. But with equal marriage, an equal age of consent and many other rights and freedoms, some argue that Pride is now just one big party.
But to celebrate the anniversary, some of the original protesters returned to where it all began to remember Pride's past and to discuss its future. GB News' South West of England reporter Jeff Moody reports.
50 years on, some of the original Pride marchers remembering the fire in their bellies that changed the world.
It was exhilarating, it was empowering. We thought we could take over the world and change it to how we feel.
It was about not letting anyone
tell you who you are or what you should do. It was about autonomy, it was about freedom, and it was about joy.
There hadn't been a lot of joy for Britain's gay community back in 1972. Homosexuality had only just been decriminalised 5 years before, but the battle for acceptance, for hearts and minds, was only just beginning.
And we marched up Charing Cross Road, we marched along Oxford Street, ending up at Speaker's Corner, heavily guarded by the police who looked, they weren't rude, but they looked distinctly uncomfortable.
Saw us all kissing one another and knew that probably we were committing some sort of criminal offence, but they didn't quite know what to do, so eventually they gave up and went away.
Those who were at the first Pride March were fighting for their freedoms, their rights, their lives.
I simply wanted not to be a criminal. I thought it was outrageous that I'd had to grow up like all my friends under the shadow of the law. But some people spat, some people shouted, most people were kind of astonished, I think, and bewildered. Some people just looked the other way.
Over the years, looking the other way became less of an option. Pride morphed into something altogether more brash, more bold, more in your face. Today's Pride, replicated in nearly every city on earth, is almost unrecognisable from that early march. But then so is the world. Now, here in the UK at least, gay people can marry, adopt children, freedoms those early campaigners never thought they could achieve. Gay rights activist Peter Tatchell was there at the beginning. Does he think, with fewer wars to wage, Pride has somehow lost its bite?
We are very unhappy at the way in which Pride has become over-corporate and commercialised, that it's now become basically just a big party. And parties are fine, but we also need to protest because there's still unfinished business. There are still battles for our community to fight and win.
Battles like Jawad's. He fled Lebanon for fear of being arrested, just for being gay.
For many people it may be just a march, but for me it means much more. It means that I can just walk safely in a place and talk about my problems, talk about my rights, you know, and just also like embrace my sexuality or orientation.
The battles continue and the celebrations too. Party, protest, parade, whatever Pride is in 2022, it means as much to some people today as it did 50 years ago. Jeff Moody, GB News.
50 years of Pride. Quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. It is 8:24, more to come this morning, including Acne.
Yeah, believe it or not, research has shown that so many people, something like 95% of Brits aged 11 to 30 are affected by acne. If it's been affecting you, and I know it really does, particularly at some points in your life, you'll want to listen up because we're talking to a dermatologist about the best ways to deal with it. That's coming up next.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England. Slowly working eastwards, but much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the Highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well, and generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. but it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon, and certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week, and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's 8:29. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Paul and Anne. Now, this is something that, first of all, you might not want to talk about. On the other hand, if it affects you or somebody you love, one of your children maybe, you will want to talk about it. And that's acne. Because research now shows that 95% of us aged 11 to 30 are affected by acne at some point in your life.
Perhaps more surprisingly, though, about 1.5 million UK adults have acne over the age of 35, showing that it's not just an issue for teenagers.
Now, let's talk to Alice Roche. Now, Alice had acne for 12 years, and so badly that she admits suffering from depression because of it, which I can totally understand. Morning, Alice. Lovely of you to join us. I mean, you look absolutely gorgeous now, but you clearly did suffer from acne pretty badly, and it got you down, yes?
Yes, I suffered. I suffered with acne from about age 12. Was told that it was just teenage spots. It was going to go away. And then it got to sort of 18, 19, wasn't going away. So I spoke to the doctors. And I had adult acne for many years after that.
So did you try whatever the doctor ordered? Did you try lots of things?
I tried everything that they offered. As many people with acne know, you often get prescribed antibiotics, you get prescribed different hormonal contraceptive pills, but often it was just masking the underlying root cause of the issue, and it actually wasn't completely, resolving it, curing it. So it just kept coming back, unfortunately. I'd get a good spell with my skin and then it would come back with a vengeance. So that sort of lasted until I was about 25.
And what was the underlying issue?
So I got diagnosed with a hormonal imbalance condition called PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. And it basically just means that you are suffering with an imbalance of your hormones. So I suffer with too much testosterone as opposed to estrogen. So it's causing excess sebum oil, which is causing the acne. So after trying everything, they put me on the waiting list to go and see a dermatologist to talk about potentially getting Roaccutane, which is sometimes called Accutane, which is basically a very severe drug that is used to treat acne.
But just to sort of underline how important it is to try and get something done about it, it's so cruel that it happens to so many people at an age group where, you know, your appearance matters to you. It really does. And every evening you look at yourself in your mirror and you wish you didn't have a spotty face. And it does really cause quite serious depressive problems, and did with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I was growing up just as Instagram was beginning, just as all of the social media was starting. I think I was 16 when Instagram first became a thing, 13 when Facebook did. So it was difficult, you know, trying to edit out the texture of your skin when you were being tagged in photos and just dreading seeing anyone put up a photo of you. Yeah, I mean, so it was quite bad. Lasted for a long time. I always feel a bit sad when I see those pictures because I know how sad I was. So it's completely overhauled. It's completely overhauled my whole life.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to say that's behind you because you look fab at the moment. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us about it. Yeah, and allowing us to show us that picture because I think that also shows, you know, just how horrible it can be.
Yeah.
And at that particularly vulnerable time of your life, I think, as well. Alice, thank you. Let's
bring in a dermatologist, Dr. Adil Shiraz, who joins us in the studio. Thanks for joining us this morning. First of all, is that a common Alice's story?
Yeah, so it's a prime example of what we see in our clinics. Very typical, have had acne for a long period of time, often maybe not treated quite as appropriately as it should be, or just treatments have failed, and eventually put onto a waiting list to see a dermatologist. And when they do see a dermatologist, then we do have things up our sleeve that we can use to treat them. And the associated depression, anxiety, mood problems go hand in hand. We see it day in and day out in our clinics.
When do you decide then as a doctor that if you've got a spotty youth sitting in front of you, when do you decide to say it's just teenage spots or take it rather more seriously than that? And it's not just your decision as a doctor, but it's that spotty youth sitting there really upset about not looking Instagram perfect.
I think that's the point, that's the right point that you've just made, that it's actually not just my decision. I have patients who who are riddled with spots and it doesn't really bother them. And then I'll have a patient with 2 spots and it affects their life significantly where they're isolated and indoors all day long. So it's not just my decision as to how bad their acne is, it's also what they feel about their acne and how that makes them feel and what impact it has on their quality of life.
What is acne? I mean, why do we call it acne? What is that?
So acne is a term that is used for a problem that is associated with what's called the pilosebaceous unit. So pilo means hair, sebaceous means oil gland. So we have these units all throughout our skin. And the basic problem is you're blocking this opening, there's increased oil production, and there's bacteria that lives there. And a combination of all these 3 gives you spots. And of course, we see these spots more often in teenagers because of the associated hormonal changes that go through during puberty. And the hormonal changes affect the oil production, which then affect and result in large, big, red, inflamed spots and maybe scars eventually. So that's the basic cause for acne. And then, of course, the associated issues with it, anxiety and problems.
Although it doesn't seem to be that it's always the case that acne brings about those issues with mental health. Mental health can also trigger acne. We see that patients who have acne definitely have a higher risk of having depression and anxiety. There was a survey done by the British Skin Foundation, which is a charity organisation, and they found that roughly out of about 1,000 people, 17% of the people surveyed had self-harm ideation and actually had self-harmed.
That's a big number.
Yeah, it just shows how...
And social media is making this particularly acute, right?
I think social media can play a role in both ways. So there are people who are now on social media, big celebrities and stars, who have shown their skin to be, not perfect, and they have acne. But on the other hand, you sometimes see the same celebrities with perfect airbrushed and photoshopped skin. So it's a bit confusing. I think we need to project more normal skin, if you will, where everybody has a few spots here and there, online and on various
But it
platforms.
doesn't mean you're dirty, does it?
Absolutely not. It's
I
got
mean,
nothing
I've
to
known
do.
when I was going through teenage, we all scrubbed our faces like crazy because we thought it was something to do with bacteria, which means dirt. And we used all sorts of chemicals on our skins as well. And you need to be nice to your skin as well, don't you?
Absolutely. So over-cleansing will make it worse. Picking your spots will make it worse. It's got absolutely nothing to do with your hygiene levels. The bacteria that is causing acne is commensal, which means it lives in our skin naturally. And some people just have more of it because of the way their genetics are, and that's why you get acne, but you can't scrub it away.
Yeah. Dr. Shiraz, really good to see you. Just very quickly, your advice would be go and see your doctor.
See your dermatologist or Zap Skin online, where we can see you online and do video calls and sort your acne.
But be proactive, sort of take charge of your skin.
Yeah.
Right, interesting, isn't it? Fascinating stuff. Right, coming up in the next couple of minutes, we could be going through the papers again with Dawn Neeson and Pete Price, so don't go away.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
As promised, they're here. Dawn Neeson and Pete Price helping us with the papers today. We were just wondering, Dawn, how my kids would react if I said, I'm going to buy this enormous house in the country. I've found this gorgeous house. It means I'm going to have to take out a mortgage. But don't worry, I'll leave the mortgage to you when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Don't know whether they'd be very pleased about that.
I hadn't even thought of that angle, actually.
Sounds like a bonkers plan. It'll never happen.
Well, page 2 of The Sun today, folks. Bojo's homeowner hope. 50-year mortgages passed on to kids. People will be offered extra long 50-year mortgages that can be passed on to their children. Lenders will be encouraged to let buyers borrow for longer. So, as Anne's just said, you can leave them to your kid. This already happens in Japan, where you can get a 100-year mortgage. And it's part of the drive to get more home ownership. Because, I mean, so many youngsters these days just can't afford it. I mean, my niece lives in London, she's 24. she's got no chance of being able to afford a property, and her rent is actually more than my mortgage.
So it's seen as a plan that actually, although I see it from the parents' point of view, I could leave them a debt. They are seeing it as possibly a way of the kids actually inheriting a house.
Inheriting
yes,
a house.
it comes with a mortgage, but they would inherit
They
the
get the
house.
asset.
Yeah, so there's two sides to it. There is the sort of like...
They get the asset and the debt.
Have a load of debt, but they're also the house.
It's interesting how it's changed, because in my day, because I'm a lot older than any of you, my first property was £10,000, but mine was a flat as well. And in those days, you couldn't get a mortgage on a flat, and they said, flats will never work. They used to say, flats will never work.
My first house was 23 grand, and I had quite a hefty.
Yeah, my mortgage was big compared to my wages.
But one of the other things they're talking about trying to get lenders to do is to go back to 100% mortgages, and that's the only way we managed to buy our first flat when we were younger. It was because the building society lent us the entire amount we needed, whereas now you have to have a huge deposit. And trying to save up thousands
and
of pounds.
also, don't you think the other thing is that people are getting hitched later in life, which means that a mortgage is affordable if there are two of you in the house. But if you're just thinking of buying it on your own, it becomes quite difficult to pay off.
Or you have to buy with a group of friends or something as well, don't you? A lot of people do that now.
Yeah, it's quite an innovative policy, and the whole process of buying a house is so old, and the whole market needs. The whole way you buy a house in this country...
modernised up, doesn't it?
Modernised and dynamic, and it takes ages, and it's just...
And it always costs more than you think.
We're also one of the few countries in the world that we have to buy our homes. Many countries, they just rent. Sweden, France, they rent.
Yeah, but what do you do when you get to retirement age?
Well, it's a way of life, so I suppose they are in that way of life, and financially...
Taken out some sort of insurance policy that will pay your rent.
Yeah, or invested your money somewhere else.
I remember when I paid my mortgage off, I cried all day and touched my bricks.
Yes,
I
remember the same.
And now the bees have taken over.
Now the bees are there, yeah.
Let's talk about the bees.
Back on the bees again, yeah. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Pete, Steve Wright. Has he been axed or has he left? What's the inside?
I think he's been axed. So Steve Wright leaves Radio 2, his show, after 23 years. A 67-year-old announced it yesterday, and I think he was a little bit tearful. But he says great news because he's going to be on to new digital projects for podcasts. I'm sorry, this stinks of ageism. Dreadful. Absolutely stinks.
And the listeners are up in arms about it.
Paul O'Grady, they've changed his show, 2 13-week shows a year. Why mess about? Why do these bosses, I've been a broadcaster for 50 years, why do these bosses come in and think they know better than the presenters? Because you don't. You want to get a life, you stupid morons. How dare you get rid of Steve Wright? It's really incensed me.
On the other hand...
Some people don't like Steve Wright.
Yeah, but on the other hand, also,
people don't like me.
Hasn't he been incredibly lucky to be there for 24 years?
He has, but he works.
Oh, I know he works.
Damned hard to put his show out. And also, it's a way of life. Once again, they don't understand. It's like closing post office and everything. It becomes part of people's lives. And all of a sudden, they're losing their best friend. When Hilda Ogden left Coronation Street, my life went into turmoil.
Sorry about that. I felt the same way about Ina Shaw.
Go on, what? What were you going to say, Dawn?
I was just wondering where the story...
Where do we go with this now? Anyway.
I think we better change completely the subject to Kate Moss.
I'm going to read this story out very, very carefully indeed. This is in all the papers, but it's page 9 of the Mirror I've chosen here. And Kate Moss has landed an £11 million deal with Diet Coke. The way the Mirror's written this story, I mean, and they've gone in, jokers may point out this photo of Kate Moss is a lot more respectable than the last time she was seen in the Mirror enjoying some Coke. And it's like, allegedly, back in the day, she was pictured in dubious circumstances. Allegedly, it was, a drug scandal. But now she has, she's come back from all that, and this is like, she needs some money, obviously. £11 million, and she is being described as the creative director. which means basically, Anne, I know, she's being pictured holding a tin of Diet Coke.
Does Diet Coke need that?
Yeah, no, and
selling.
I worry we're going back to the 80s when, you know, everything was about, oh, you must be as thin as Kate Moss.
Wow.
And the way to do it is to drink Diet Coke.
Well,
for
there is
heaven's
that.
sake.
I mean, there's that line that supermodels survive literally on caffeine and cigarettes and didn't eat anything. So, I mean, yeah.
You know, we're going backwards, I think. There.
Also, it's
That's
sad
a
that
shame.
the papers have picked up on allegedly what she did in the past. Hey, everyone's got a future. Everyone changes their life around. You know, don't go on that.
No.
But I don't know why Diet Coke is spent, or any Coke or Pepsi are spending any money on advertising. Because
they own the world already, don't they?
Apparently, I can't remember where I heard this fact, but Coke is the second most recognised word in the world after OK.
Wow.
Really?
Apparently so, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Yes.
Gosh, you know, that's
awful.
made me
That's
speechless.
And it's got OK in it.
It's like just slightly
It
depressing.
has. I never even thought about that.
C-O-K-E.
Yeah, so what you need a creative director and £11 million.
No, you don't.
Well, I'll do it.
You
I'll
don't.
send them the
No, we're giving them far too much publicity as it is.
Anyway, yes.
Yeah. Let's talk, Pete.
More people. They're going to pay loads of money.
I know,
Hello.
Pete, very quickly, private firms hitting drivers with 8.6 million parking tickets.
Yeah, I will say to everybody out there, you've got to be careful and please be nicer to people. We've been in a pandemic. Stop having to go at people in cars. Let's get some life back into the cities. Let's get some life back into the shops. Don't be using these ridiculous amounts of money and the bully tactics to get the money. And also, to everybody who's got a private piece of land, if you can't park there, can we have the signs saying it? Because they're about 3 inches small, in the corner. Rip off merchants, every one of you. We need to help get life back to normal. I'd love to say, I own a piece of land, park all you want, all of you.
All right, no, I think we need to go back to the green room and have a nice glass of of cocoa, not a glass of anything.
See, you're pushing Coca-Cola again.
But we've come to the end of our newspaper review. I'm so sorry. I know there's always so much more to talk about. But today, we've been showing you, all through the programme today, the British Army's new recruitment advert.
Yeah.
And we'll show a little bit more of it in the next few minutes, because the British Army is looking to the future and has launched this new recruitment drive featuring robots.
Yep, the campaign called Nothing Can Do What a Soldier Can Do contains the message that while new technologies are being used by troops in battle, the future of UK defence will be underpinned by soldiers.
Yeah, human beings. So let's talk to Colonel Nick Mackenzie, Assistant Director of Recruiting at the British Army. Hello there, thanks very much indeed for joining us. We've really enjoyed showing the recruitment video that's out now. And the message, I think, is very clear, is that you still want more soldiers.
That's absolutely right. We, the army, for many, many years has been built on soldiers. That's our bedrock. That's our foundation. People make up the army. People are the army. So yeah, absolutely. We need to continue to recruit young, diverse people with fresh ideas.
I can't help thinking, and it's a great video, as we've shown, that not only is your message out there to young people who might want to join up, obviously, but maybe that message is also for politicians. You're saying to them, it's all very well to, invest in cyber things, in robots, robotics, drones and all that sort of thing. But what we, the army, still want is more soldiers, and yet you're facing cuts.
I think to come to your first point, I mean, this advert is really to break the perception from many people out in the British society that the army is not recruiting. And what we're hoping to show is how technology and people can work together to make the army as advanced and as technologically current as it needs to be.
But what about your message to the politicians who make decisions about whether or not there should be defence cuts, whilst at the same time investing money in other things?
Well, I mean, it's really not. I mean, my role is to ensure that the army recruits the numbers that the wider army and the government wants us to recruit for. This year, it's about 12,500 people, which is about average for year on year. Because at the end of the day, people leave the army to go off to retire, to go off and do different new things, and so all I'm here to do is make sure that we achieve our targets year on year. And I hope hopefully this campaign, as you said, which I think is really cool, will appeal to that younger generation.
Yeah, and you mentioned a young, diverse generation. That's particularly what you're after. Can you just expand on that for us a little bit more?
Yeah, I think there is a perception out in society that the army is quite homogenised. We clearly wear uniform, we march around, we all look the same. But underneath those hats, underneath the uniform are different people. And we believe that by recruiting diverse people from different backgrounds makes our team much stronger. And that's what we're trying to appeal to.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. As I say, we have enjoyed showing the video, so I guess we've been doing a bit of recruitment for you today. Thank you. Lots of people getting in touch as well. Stephen says, as an army veteran of the late 60s and 70s, I would still join now as a young man, but as a wiser elder of this country, I know our forces have been subject to a very poor political direction. The trend towards conventional large army warfare is clear, but still the Prime Minister looks like he will make the armed forces cuts in the ranks. He seems incapable of thinking at the strategic level, unlike his hero, Winston Churchill.
Yeah, Andy says, we have a volunteer armed forces that is renowned as one of the best in the world. We instill an ethos of courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity, etc. Perhaps we should be paid, consummate with our commitment of putting our lives on the line, so that our citizens have the freedom to do and say what your last commentator made.
Yeah, and Richard says, hi folks, I believe the army is a great grounding for life. I left school at age 15 with minimal education and then worked in factories undertaking moronic, low-paid work. I then joined the army. Since leaving the British Army, I have risen to become a leader in my field of choice. That's banking, retail and health. I sit at board level and advise other leaders in these fields. I couldn't have done this without the education and discipline the army taught me.
Yeah, indeed. But there are people who leave the army and have problems and they're not looked after properly, as we've spoken about many times on GB News. So that could potentially put people off.
It could.
However,
8:52. Yeah, I was going to say, Stephanie's joined us.
Yeah.
Hello, hi there, how are you?
Good morning, Anne.
My sister was at the Adele concert.
What was
She said it was just absolutely wonderful.
She made such a triumph comeback because a lot of people were questioning whether Adele could pull it off. You know, since she cancelled Weekends with Adele in Las Vegas, a lot of people were questioning, has Adele still got it? Has she lost it? She admitted that she suffers from stage fright. So I think a lot of people, it was a lot of pressure on her for this concert last night. But the general consensus is that she'd done brilliantly. She performed in front of 65,000 people yesterday. It was the one of two shows. So tonight she'll be back again and both shows have been sold out. She touched on Las Vegas. She said literally her and her team are just waiting for one more piece of equipment and her show should be good back to go. Her residency should be good to go. And I'm so glad that she done it because I think we don't have anyone like Adele in this country, or I think even in music. So for her to be tarnished with not being a good performer is a shame.
Yeah, she must have just gone through a sort of hiccup, I suppose.
Yeah, because her music speaks for itself.
Yeah. And she looked fabulous as well. I mean, she looked wonderful.
I know, like, look how that waist is in. And it was her first concert in 5 years. The last time she performed was here. It was in 2017 at Wembley Stadium, but she had to cancel the final two shows because she had damaged vocal cords. But last night she had some hot water on stage with her. She was good.
Oh,
hot water?
Back. Yeah.
Oh.
To help.
That's these singers, yeah. Sometimes it's usually lukewarm.
Yes.
Oh, really?
They all have their little
very picky about it. We talked about Kate Moss in the newspaper review. So can we go on to the creative friends? That's what's her name?
Kaufman.
Martha Kaufman.
Yeah. So.
She said she's done an interview in which she said she now realises and very much regrets that Friends wasn't very diverse. And when you look at Friends, and I'm a big fan, there's not. I mean, it's totally white.
And the thing is, even like me, even as a black person, I used to watch Friends and I never actually realised that there was a lack of diversity on the show. It's only now where diversity is such a big thing.
Yeah, but does she need to apologise for a show that was on, what, 20 years ago?
But it's still on everywhere. I mean,
but they're not making it, are
they?
So you can't,
It's more and more noticeable, though.
Yeah,
you realise you've watched 10, 12 episodes or something, because I binge on Friends. I could almost just relate every script to you. After about 10 or 12, you realise you haven't seen any diversity at all.
In the whole of the 10-year reign of the show, they only had 2 diverse characters. I think it was Ross was dating a black woman at one time.
Oh, that's right, he did Charlie.
And I can't remember who the other person is. But I guess when you see all the shows now, TV shows, where they're almost overwoke now and they're trying to compensate with making sure they tick all the diversity boxes. When you watch Friends, you're like, ooh, but Friends is such a good show that I would never criticise it for not having diverse characters.
Criticise it for not being funny, fair enough, but lack
you're not a Friends fan? I know every episode almost backwards. It's incredible.
So what she's done now, she's donated £3 million into research into African-American studies. She said over the past 20 years, she's really learnt a lot. So
bless her.
I thought
Bless
it was
her for
quite
saying
interesting because she didn't need to do that. And to be honest, like, you know, some people will be like, why are you doing it now? Are you just trying to cover your own back?
But should other TV shows apologise as well for not being equally diverse?
Yeah,
How far back do we go?
Raising Frankie, she did just recently. And I have to say, that's very middle class and white. Too.
Only Fools and Horses. Where do we go?
Well,
the A-Team.
Didn't the A-Team have a black person?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, but there's no women. In the A-Team. I mean, where do we stop?
You're quite right. You watch a programme now and you get a married unit, don't you?
Yeah.
And every single person is different race, you know.
It's like
children as well. And you think, how did they have that family? But it's just been cast that way.
I just think it's all about the timing. You know, most of these shows came out in a time where diversity wasn't a big thing. And obviously now, all the shows we're going to be seeing now, they're overwoke, they're catering to everybody.
OK, we're being yelled at because we're running out of time. You're going to come back?
I'm going to be back.
Absolutely good. OK, so we're heading fast towards 9 o'clock. Much more for you coming up.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England, slowly working eastwards. But much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the Highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well. And generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. But it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon. Certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Saturday, the 2nd of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Paul.
Yeah, very good morning to you. We're live across the whole of the UK, on TV, on radio, we're everywhere. Here's what you're waking up to this morning.
Chris Pincher has been suspended as a Tory MP following allegations of groping at a private members' club. The now independent MP is still under investigation by the Parliament's behaviour watchdog. But what fallout could this have for the government?
Meanwhile, COVID infections in the UK have jumped by 32% in a week. 2.3 million infections were reported in 1 week in the middle of June, representing one of the highest leaps on record. We'll be finding out what the cause is behind this increase.
And 50 years of Pride. Our reporter Jeff Moody catches up with some of the original organisers to look back at where it all began, remembering Pride's past, and to discuss its future.
As ever, speaking of discussions, you can join the conversation this morning. We do love to hear from you. You can drop us a line, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Now, we've been talking about house ownership, second house ownership, why we in this country strive to own our own houses rather than doing what a lot of other countries do, which just concentrate on rentals. So to combat a huge rise in short-term rentals on websites such as Airbnb and Booking.com, the government is now contemplating whether to make owners register second homes and even perhaps make them subject to a surprise inspection visit.
Currently, owners of second homes in England can avoid paying council tax and access small business rates relief by declaring an intention to let the property out to holidaymakers.
Did you know that? Ministers are now looking at whether holiday lets should be registered, and this comes amid concern that inflated property prices are pushing established residents out of their hometowns and home villages.
Joining us now is Jill Williams, Labour Party councillor for East Brighton. Very good morning to you, Jill. Thanks for speaking to us. First of all, what do you make about this potential policy?
Well, I welcome it. We've been calling for this for quite some time. We have a huge problem in Brighton Hove. We have a huge problem in our housing crisis. People are moving out of the city because they can't afford to live here. We can't fill vacancies, and we're losing classrooms because families are moving out because it's too expensive. So I would welcome any help with regulation, with Airbnb type lettings, for example. I know there are over 3,500 being advertised in our city, unregulated. We do not know whether the health and safety checks are taking place. Ordinary businesses have to have fire and health and safety checks, and these don't. And this is my main concern here, and I think this is most welcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring up the health and safety concerns. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But it can have a devastating effect on local communities, can't it? Because houses that should be being lived in by families who pay for the area's facilities and use those areas' facilities are not there. And instead, there's an empty house or a house that's being used as a business, basically.
Yes, it's really worrying. 1 in 37 properties are empty in Brighton and Hove, and we have a huge waiting list for people who are desperate for an affordable home. So yes, I really do think we need to take measures to tackle this. I feel that, the tourist industry welcomes visitors. We need them, but we need to regulate it, and we need to make sure that we've got decent, affordable homes for people who live in the area.
What sorts of stories then have you heard about these second homes that are let out then in terms of the lack of regulation?
Well, we've had some problems with people complain about the noise, party houses at the weekends, rubbish, lots of revelry, shall I say, with all manner of things, with drinking and possibly drug taking. We also have a huge problem in our city with people who are renting their home, and some of them have been there for quite some time, are being literally turfed out because the landlord wants to make it into an Airbnb because it's more profitable. Only yesterday I've been dealing with a problem with 5 tenants who have been given notice because the landlord wants to turn it into an Airbnb and they don't know where they're going to go. So we face these problems day in, day out.
On the other hand, I think that if anyone watching at the moment would fancy buying maybe a flat in Brighton, wouldn't that be lovely, as a second home? They may not like the idea of the government or the local council poking their nose in straight away and saying, hang on a minute, you can't buy this property unless you promise you're going to live in it.
Well, we have a problem, as we say, and we have a housing crisis. Now, I am looking at trying to get regulations in for new developments that they can only sell to people who are going to live in it, the principal residence policy. If there was plenty of homes out there, it wouldn't matter quite so much, but we already have a huge amount of second homes, and I think we need to get a balance here.
On the other hand, again, I'm just putting it as playing devil's advocate in a way. If I lived locally in one house, but I wanted to buy the house next door, as a business, why shouldn't I?
There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't, but are you going to think about who's going to live in it? Are you going to offer it as a home, as an affordable, decent, well-regulated, safe home for people who want to live here? There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't. If you do want to have a holiday let, it should be regulated. You should pay tax on your profits like everybody else does, and you should make sure that it's you have your health and safety certificates and fire certificates like all businesses have to.
It smacks of Big Brother a bit, though, doesn't it?
I don't see why. Why shouldn't? Would you, if you want to go and stay in a holiday let? Are you worried of whether they've got insurance, whether it's safe for you? Has it been checked for fire safety? I think it's the least anybody should do.
Yeah, I'm having trouble being the devil's advocate here, I must say, because I'm seeing your point of view utterly. I suppose the other thing, the way it must have an effect on the community is when you live somewhere and you call it your home and you get to know it, you like to sort of have an idea of who the locals are. And if many properties are being let as holiday lets, the place is, completely populated by people you just don't know anything about.
Yes, and that is really worrying. I do get calls from people who are saying, I don't know who's next door, I'm worried, they're making noises, they're making me feel anxious. And it's nice to have a neighbour that you know and you can pop in and say hello to. And I'm afraid that, there's just far too many holiday lets and Airbnbs now, and people are feeling like they're losing out on their communities.
Jill, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Jill Williams there, Labour councillor from Brighton. Your thoughts, as ever, very welcome.
Yeah, as I said, I was having trouble playing devil's advocate there because I could actually see that point of view completely. Yeah. I mean, when you live in a lovely place like East Brighton, for instance, you sort of get the feeling it'd be nice to know who the neighbours are and get a feeling of who the locals are, and and they should be paying their council tax like you do, so that you can have the facilities that you enjoy.
Yeah, that sense of community, isn't it?
Seems sensible, doesn't it?
It is 9 minutes past 9. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to bring you up to date with what else is happening news-wise. Questions being raised over the Prime Minister, who delayed suspending the Tory whip from MP Chris Pincher following allegations of sexual misconduct. He's being investigated by Parliament's watchdog after being accused of groping 2 men at a private members' club while drunk on Wednesday.
And the government is considering extra long-term mortgages on family homes as part of plans to ease the housing crisis. And it means people could be able to buy more expensive properties with no expectation of actually completing the repayment during their own lifetime. So the house and any outstanding debt would then be passed on to their kids.
Searches for bowel cancer symptoms on the NHS website have gone up tenfold following the death of Dame Deborah James this week. Health Service figures show there were just over 23,000 hits to the webpage the day after Dame Deborah died. It's up from 2,000 the day before.
And the Royal College of Nursing claims its staff were left at risk during COVID without proper guidance, effective testing or protective equipment. It's calling for nurses to be fully involved in the government's inquiry into the pandemic.
Age UK says 4 in 5 older carers worry whether they can keep providing care. The charity claims COVID and cuts to social care have shifted the burden onto those who look after loved ones, making their lives impossible. It's urging the government to improve benefit payments and access to counselling services.
And British drivers were handed a record 8.6 million parking fines in a year for leaving their cars in places like shopping centres and service stations. The DVLA says an average of 23,000 tickets were issued every day from April to March this year. And the government, it says it's determined to end rip-off parking practices.
Let's go back to our top story then. Chris Pincher suspended as a Conservative MP after allegations that he groped 2 men at a private members' club in London. The party said the whip had been removed from him after he was reported to Parliament's behavioural watchdog.
Well, the former Housing Minister, Kelly Tolhurst, has been appointed as his replacement now. Joining us is the political consultant, Emma Burnell. Hello there. Very good to talk to you this morning. This is quite devastating for the government, isn't it? Particularly for the Prime Minister. This is something like the 5th MP who's having to reconsider his position following sort of allegations of sexual misconduct. It's not a good record, is it?
It's not a good record, it's not a good look, and it just is starting to feel never-ending. When governments start to get into these sleaze cycles, when it's 1 or 2 stories, it can feel like, OK, well, that's an exception. At the moment, the exceptions feel like the people who aren't breaking the rules in some way or another. This has been an ongoing story since Oliver Dowden, for very different reasons, was forced out. It just doesn't seem to stop at any point. And I think there are really serious questions to be asked about how the Conservatives are vetting their candidates. I would say, and I would really stress, it's not just a Conservative problem. This is there's been problems in other parties. But at the moment, I mean, it just seems to be of orders of magnitude greater in the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
And I do worry that the fact that we have accepted poor behaviour from the Prime Minister means that it's very hard not to accept poor behaviour from everybody below him.
Yeah. Do you think the criticism's fair about the delay in suspending the whip from Chris Pincher? It broke sort of Thursday night, and then it wasn't until yesterday evening that the whip was suspended.
I think there's 2 things that you should separate out here. The delay is probably down to process. Processes do take time. And actually, when somebody's accused of something, even when they've accepted, and in his letter, Chris Pincher accepted that he'd behaved badly, there does need to be a proper process because everyone is due to have good process, good justice. What baffles me is why Number 10 came out swinging in his defence in the middle of that process. That's not good justice. That's not good process at all. So why they came out saying, oh, well, he's resigned, he shouldn't have the whip removed, it's all over now, nothing to see here. Knowing, they must have known. How could they not have known that that just couldn't and wouldn't hold?
This acceptance of poor behaviour, or, yes, I suppose you could say the acceptance of different behaviour, do you think there's any argument for saying it started when this Prime Minister moved into Number 10 Downing Street with a woman who wasn't his wife while he was still married elsewhere, and that sort of just filters on down?
I wouldn't make that argument. I think there's a great deal to criticise Boris Johnson over. As a divorced woman, I'm not going to start to judge people's marital fidelity, other than my own ex-husbands. But I do think it's not really about how we treat the other individuals in our lives. If it's consensual, which obviously Boris Johnson and Carrie Johnson's relationship is, I think the bigger problem is many of the other moral failings of this Prime Minister that were not about his personal, highly colourful personal life. Having an affair is one thing. It's not a great thing, particularly if you're the wronged party. But it's not the same as this allegations of groping, which is completely non-consensual.
Yeah, but the fact is, as we were just saying, the fifth MP to have to reconsider their position after allegations of sexual misconduct, and in some cases proof of that, is not a good look. But you have to look upwards, don't you, and say the rot comes down from the top.
Yeah, I think there's a question of Boris Johnson's libertinism that maybe has in himself manifested in a certain sexual incontinence, shall we say, but his also just laissez-faire attitude to people behaving poorly. And that has obviously reflected extremely badly on his time as Prime Minister and on this record number of cases where people are accused, people are found guilty of really quite extraordinarily bad things.
Can he do anything now to rescue it? John Major faced a similar problem in his time. He, even despite launching a campaign to sort of get back to basics, it didn't work, did it?
Well, John Major signed his own death warrant with his Back to Basics campaign because it literally opened himself up to every journalist in the country seeking out as many stories as they could possibly find that could be then ushered in to show what hypocrisy Back to Basics was. Boris Johnson has many, many flaws. I suspect one of them is not actually hypocrisy, in that he's not going to go around pretending that he's whiter than white on these issues. But that brings its own problems. That brings its own trouble. Boris Johnson is going to get into and is in a spiral now where I can't see him rescuing it. What is his option? He can't go for a back to basics approach, as you say. The country would laugh him out of office. He can't seem to turn the page. We don't know how many more of these stories there are lined up. There is still, as we know, an unnamed Conservative MP who is being investigated under rape allegations. That's another one yet to burst. And there's probably a whole load happening under the surface we don't yet know about. Westminster is a gossipy, cliquey place. A lot of these stories come out, and once that dam has started to crack, the burst just floods through. And I think that's where we're at, and that's where the Prime Minister's at. And I just don't see him getting his head over water on this.
Appreciate your time this morning, Emma. Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Political consultant joining us. Do let us know your views.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? You might have your own view about how libertarian Boris Johnson might be, but hypocrisy is probably not something you would throw at him because he doesn't go there, does he? He does what he wants and is quite open about doing what he wants.
Yeah, I guess it's just...
Doesn't pretend to be one thing and say another.
Yeah, although some people say there are contradictions in what he does and what he says. So that's...
John Major, however, launched his Back to Basics, trying to get back to, moral coding or something, and he just had, or was still having, an affair with Edwina Currie at the time, of all people. So, I mean, it's just extraordinary when you look back, isn't it? Yeah. I was asking much earlier, who would you have as the next leader, if you could? And who's this? Liz says, Tobias Ellwood is my choice. Ex-army, very knowledgeable about the world and home affairs. He wouldn't put up with any nonsense in the party.
Yeah. But Liz thinks, and morning to you, Liz, Jacob Rees-Mogg as leader of the Conservative Party. He is a true Tory and is statesmanlike. I watched him yesterday with Tom Harwood and thought he came across very well. He also has a dry sense of humour.
Yeah, I mean, people who meet Jacob Rees-Mogg, have you?
I've interviewed him on the phone.
Yeah,
not
me too. I've only ever interviewed him down the line on a sort of video call. But people who have met him or know him always say what an amazing person he is. He's better than he comes over in the media. I don't know. Steve says, good morning. How about closing down the bars in Westminster? Address the culture. We saw what Partygate was like. Parliament belongs to we, the people, not those sent there. They need a wake-up call or vote them out.
Yeah, although apparently this wasn't a Westminster bar, was it? It was a private members' club.
Yeah, but it was the Conservative Carlton Club. And it was a sort of parliamentary do, wasn't it? It was some Friends of Cyprus or something. So, I don't know. They say that there is such a drinking culture in Westminster. That is what needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Listen, do you want to hear about a very, very small museum?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I think we should talk about that next because the iconic, you know those iconic red phone boxes that you still see around in some parts of the country?
Yeah, sometimes they're used as libraries and things, aren't they, in little villages?
Yeah. Is that just with less books or very small books?
I think it's with very few books.
Few books.
Yeah, I think they're the normal size.
Not just libraries, ladies and gentlemen, also museums. More on that coming up in just a moment.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England, slowly working eastwards. But much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the Highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well, and generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. But it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon. Certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GBNews, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well.
I feel like I could take on the world.
Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. It's just coming up to 9:25. A very good morning to you. If you've just woken up and joined us, plenty ahead.
Yeah, lots to come. But first of all, a serial sex attacker who drugged and assaulted straight men could have attacked many more victims who may be too embarrassed to come forward, according to detectives.
Yeah, 35-year-old Luis da Silva Neto has been found guilty of drugging and assaulting 2 men at a luxury house in the Oxfordshire countryside.
He used the date rape drug GHB on the men in separate incidents last year before going on to commit the offences. GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White reports.
Captured on police body-worn video, the moment detectives arrest a serial sex offender.
Put your trousers on. So at this point in time, you're under arrest.
Luis da Silva Neto drugged his male victims before raping or sexually assaulting them. 2 men reported their attacks to authorities, but police fear there may be many more of his victims still out there. Da Silva Neto would often look for men at night, especially those that had too much to drink. He filmed on his mobile phone as he went hunting them in public toilets. Da Silva Neto drugged both his victims in separate incidents inside this exclusive cottage here in the Oxfordshire village of Middle Barton. In one incident, he picked up his victim outside a nightclub in West London before driving him 73 miles here and raping him. That victim told police he was picked up outside this nightclub in Chelsea. He'd been looking for a taxi. All he could remember was drinking a small amount of liquid inside Da Silva Neto's car. Then waking up in the cottage sometime later, having been raped. In interviews in police custody, Da Silva Neto insisted the interaction had been fully consensual.
I was on the King's Road. I stopped to get some cash out, and I started talking to this guy as well. And he told me that he's been to the club, blah, blah. I was like, "Do you want to have a drink together or whatever?" He was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm married, but yeah."
Da Silva Neto's other victim knew his attacker when he says his trust was betrayed in the most appalling manner.
Basically, he drugged me and he used me. I don't want to go into details. I don't want to memorise it again. I don't want to relive it. For me, this is the worst experience I've ever survived or lived through. I'm heterosexual, I'm Catholic, I'm more religious, and something that I just need to digest.
Police say Da Silva Neto appears to have very deliberately targeted straight men, believing perhaps that they'd be too embarrassed to report their attack.
It is entirely possible that there are other offences out there and other victims who have not as yet been identified or identified themselves to us. So what I really want to do is encourage victims to come forward and have the confidence to do that. You know, a conviction of somebody for offences like this is quite often the platform from which other people will then have that confidence and feel empowered to come forward and feel safer to do so.
Authorities believe it's likely Da Silva Neto used the drug GHB. Only small amounts can render a victim unconscious. The gay serial killer Stephen Port used GHB on his 4 victims, young men who he killed with high doses of the drug, before dumping their bodies in this graveyard near his home in Barking in East London. GHB was also the weapon of choice for serial rapist Reynard Sinaga, a Manchester nurse who's believed to have raped more than 200 young men since 2005. Police say these events are thankfully very rare. Luis da Silva Neto has now been convicted for the crimes he committed. Police are appealing for anyone else who believes they may have been drugged and assaulted by him to come forward. Mark White, GB News.
Absolutely terrible, terrible story.
Yeah.
You just can't believe the world sometimes, can you?
Indeed, indeed. That report by Mark White, it is 9:29. Lots of you getting in touch with us this morning.
Yeah, very upset about Steve Wright being sacked. He is leaving the BBC. He's been doing his Radio 2 programme in the afternoon. Steve Wright in the afternoon.
Yeah. He did
for
have a posse.
24 years. Sorry?
Did he have a posse?
How do you mean? Lots.
Steve Wright's posse when he was on Radio.
Yes. Well, he's always had a
crew.
circuit of people, hasn't
Yeah.
he? Always with him. And I've been on his programme quite a few times, and you always feel you're going home. It's lovely. It's just friendly people talking and good music, and they all know what they're talking about, which is nice.
Yeah.
But and he's been an absolute institution on the afternoons and delivering high audience figures. So nobody can quite understand why he is going. He's clearly been pushed. It's a sort of BBC thing. They're probably after a more youthful audience. Though why they would want to do that on Radio 2 when they've got a very loyal audience, I wouldn't know. Steve Wright being axed. Bev says, my husband was a presenter on local BBC radio. When he reached his mid-60s, they told him that they wanted to encourage a younger audience, so he was sacked. His fans wrote hundreds of letters because most were retired, but it made no difference. Yes, the BBC are definitely ageist.
Thank you for that, Bev. Also, some of you getting in touch with us with regards to the Army, because they're launching a recruitment drive with a fancy new promotional video. And they're basically saying that it doesn't matter how much technology you've got, you can't replace human beings for soldiers. Mel in Sunderland, morning Mel, says, do we need more soldiers? The answer is clearly no. Technology has overtaken the need for large armies. Smart drones could take out battalions in a full-scale war easily. Hypersonic missiles can take out aircraft carriers and warships by individuals sitting at a console thousands of miles away. Yes, we need people and equipment, but not as much.
I don't know whether the Army would actually agree with you there, Mel, because they are actively recruiting, and they do agree that whilst new technology is important, they still need people. Shan says, bring back 2 to 3 years national military service. 2 to 3 years, really. This would give a career to those who enjoy it. It helps unemployment, builds discipline, teamwork, self-esteem, respect and leadership.
Yeah, and S. Thompson agrees, essentially, bring back conscription. I think people won't come across the channel if they knew they would have to serve in the armed forces. Was when conscription, with military conscription, was it 2 to 3 years?
I thought it was 2, wasn't it, when it was national service? Was it 2? Maybe it was only 1.
Don't know.
Can't remember.
If you can clarify for us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, and we were talking about Acne as well, and that's been very interesting as well, because everybody has a different story to tell about Acne, and whatever worked for you, if hopefully something did work for you, you sort of then become committed to it. Hello, Paul and Anne, says Jackie in Cornwall. My daughter had terrible acne for years and was eventually advised to give up dairy. After years of upset, the acne disappeared, and other people too have found giving up dairy gets rid of acne.
Yeah.
I remember going through years of trying to give up dairy as well. Mind you, I'm a complete cheeseaholic. Deborah Grant says, I've just watched Dr. Shiraz, that was the person we were interviewing, and she says, stress does make acne worse. He didn't mention that if you have poor skin hygiene or clog your pores with heavy makeup, you'll make the acne worse. It happened to me, and it happened to my young cousin. Actually, he did say that it's nothing... He just said it doesn't mean, if you have acne, it doesn't mean you have poor skin hygiene. It doesn't mean you're dirty.
No.
That's not it. It was a different bacteria, he said, that lives in our bodies.
Yeah.
And that, you know, depending on your genetic makeup, you react in different ways.
Indeed. Keep your emails coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Coming up, we think, they're calling it the smallest museum in East Yorkshire, but it's basically a phone box.
So it has to be, surely, the smallest museum in the UK? Don't know,
Yeah,
you'll find out.
I don't know, after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Breakfast with Anne and Paul. Good to have you with us this morning. It is 9:35.
We've been looking forward to this, haven't we?
Yeah, because we haven't seen...
We haven't seen this, and we don't know whether it's about a telephone box museum.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean this is a museum with lots of telephone boxes? Or does it mean it's a museum inside a telephone box?
Yeah, let's find out. Anna Riley reports.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, I declare the Captain Heritage Museum officially open.
Ringing in a new era. Abandoned during the pandemic, this phone box was rescued by members of the community, saving it from ruin and rust. And they've turned it into something special.
Well, it is now East Yorkshire's smallest museum and heritage centre. And also, we've got it for the bottom part as a book swapping, because you don't want people having to crouch down to read what we've got. But it's really going to be about the heritage and information about what Catton, High and Low are. The church here is over 1,000 years old, and it used to be used, it was the main church for the region, and it was used by people coming across the river from Scorby, who came across at Wath Lane, because the Wath is the ancient word for a ford. So they could walk across, getting a bit wet, but would come to church and come to work here because there were mills and there was all sorts. So it's important that people who come through, I mean, it's a very nice village to live in with a pub, but people who are coming ought to know what happened and what was here, which has never been put really into history.
Decommissioned phone boxes in Britain, such as this one in Catton, are increasingly being transformed into something with a practical purpose. The revival of this one has brought people together through sharing tales of the past.
Everybody who's seen it has been impressed, including me, because yes, having seen what it was like before, and this is fantastic, because there is such a lot of history around here, which many people aren't aware of. Hopefully visitors or walkers in the area, cyclists, we get an awful lot of people coming through. They will see this and, appreciate it for what it is.
While the phone may have stopped ringing here many years ago, villagers have taken up the call to protect their own piece of history. Anna Riley, GB News, Low Catton.
Well, I'm glad they haven't got rid of it, because I think those old telephone boxes are beautiful things, particularly when they're sort of scrubbed up and repainted like that one. It's better than, going to the tip, isn't it? And those new telephone boxes, mind you, you don't see telephone boxes very much at all.
Well, you don't. This is true. And, my daughter's 4. What is that?
Wouldn't know where to start with.
What
a
is
telephone
that?
box.
What, people used to go into a box and phone someone?
Yeah.
What? They didn't go like this?
No, I know. Isn't that odd? How our lives have changed since the arrival of the mobile phone. But I'm glad they're not getting rid of it. I mean, it's like red post boxes as well.
Yeah.
They are part of... certainly they look wonderful in a village, you know, outside a lovely pub or something like that. They're part of that beautiful English look or British look.
Yeah, they definitely are. Not like the modern or the newer BT phone boxes. But we were saying that we think that could be one of the smallest museums in Britain. And I actually did a little... Google, and there is a phone box that's been turned into a museum apparently in Worley in West Yorkshire. So that's maybe
in the same way it tells you about that particular village.
Yeah. So
that's a good idea.
So I think that's why they're saying it's the smallest in East Yorkshire, because there's also one in West Yorkshire.
Yeah, it's catching on maybe.
Yeah.
And where's that village that Kate Middleton's parents come from? In Berkshire. I can't remember the name of it now. But I was doing an outside broadcast from there when they got married, and the world went to that particular village. And they've got a beautiful post box in that village too, and they've turned it into one of those book-swapping library-type things for the village. And it's really nice. I think if you can think of a really good use for an old-fashioned telephone box, it's nice to keep it, isn't it?
Books? What's a book?
Oh, gosh, don't say that. No, people still love books. I've never got into the Kindle thing, and now I can't read off the screen. It's not the same, is it?
Hey, listen, talking of turning back the clock, it's 50 years since the Gay Liberation Front first marched through central London, demanding equality, visibility and acceptance. Around 500 people took the streets on the 1st of July, 1972.
Yeah, and back then you couldn't have foreseen just how far gay rights would come in 50 years, and that's quite a long time, I suppose, nor how far the march itself would grow in confidence. But with equal marriage and equal age of consent and many other rights and freedoms, some people now argue that Pride is just one big party.
Well, to celebrate the anniversary, some of the original protesters returned to where it all began to remember Pride's past and to discuss its future. GB News' South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has more.
50 years on, some of the original Pride marchers remembering the fire in their bellies that changed the world.
It was exhilarating, it was empowering. We thought we could take over the world and change it to how we feel.
It was about not letting anyone tell you who you are or what you should do. It was about autonomy, it was about freedom, and it was about joy.
There hadn't been a lot of joy for Britain's gay community back in 1972. Homosexuality had only just been decriminalised 5 years before, but the battle for acceptance, for hearts and minds, was only just beginning.
And we marched up Charing Cross Road, we marched on Oxford Street, ending up at Speaker's Corner, heavily guarded by the police, who looked, they weren't rude, but they looked distinctly uncomfortable.
Saw us all kissing one another and knew that probably we were committing some sort of criminal offence, but they didn't quite know what to do, so eventually they gave up and went away.
Those who were at the first Pride March were fighting for their freedoms, their rights, their lives.
I simply wanted not to be a criminal. I thought it was outrageous that I'd had to grow up like all my friends under the shadow of the law. But some people spat, some people shouted, most people were kind of astonished, I think, and bewildered. Some people just looked the other way.
Over the years, looking the other way became less of an option. Pride morphed into something altogether more brash, more bold, more in your face. Today's Pride, replicated in nearly every city on earth, is almost unrecognisable from that early march. But then so is the world. Now, here in the UK at least, gay people can marry, adopt children, freedoms those early campaigners never thought they could achieve. Gay rights activist Peter Tatchell was there at the beginning. Does he think, with fewer wars to wage, Pride has somehow lost its bite?
We are very unhappy at the way in which Pride has become over-corporate and commercialised, that it's now become basically just a big party. And parties are fine, but we also need to protest because there's still unfinished business. There are still battles for our community to fight and win.
Battles like Jawad's. He fled Lebanon for fear of being arrested, just for being gay.
For many people it may be just a march, but for me it means much more. It means that I can just walk
safely in a place and talk about my problems, talk about my rights, you know, and just also like embrace my sexuality or orientation.
The battles continue and the celebrations too. Party, protest, parade, whatever Pride is in 2022, it means as much to some people today as it did 50 years ago. Jeff Moody, GB News.
I think it's brilliant, as long as it always remains peaceful and happy, and that's nice, because it is something to be proud of, isn't it?
It's a good thing, and actually Matt's been in touch with us this morning. He says we need to recognise where Pride came from, to fight for LGBTQ rights and to strive for equality. Many companies, though, are profiting off the Pride rainbow, and some Pride events have become obsessed with profits and lose the substance and inclusivity of all salary bands, I think.
Yeah, I think the Pride rainbow gets hijacked every so often, doesn't it, by other movements or something. But you know, keep it calm, keep it you know, happy. I think that's the main thing, and positive.
Yeah.
Positive.
General life philosophy.
Yeah, true. Aidan's joined us, Stephanie's joined us.
Yeah.
There's lots of sport and showbiz, actually, isn't there?
Yeah. Is sport showbiz? Sport is showbiz.
I know.
The
worlds collide.
More than ever. More than I've noticed it through my career, really. I remember when sport used to be, I mean, back in the 80s, that's before my career started, incidentally, but newspapers used to dedicate
don't rub it in.
three pages at the back of the book, and then it's then extended to 16, and then more and more, as my time went on, you get calls from the features desk, the news desk, the showbiz desk, X, Y, and Z. You know, and it just grew exponentially.
I mean, you only have to look at today's front pages, and there's tennis stars, and usually it's some under, you know, there's football stars, there's everything.
Stars are celebrities.
They are,
as well.
yeah,
Like,
and they behave like them, and they get paid like them as well. So you know.
That's the difference when they've been brought into line financially, the sports stars, with showbiz and other entertainment over the last 20 years or so.
But we do draw a line at sports stars when they enter sort of music careers or film careers. Sometimes.
Well, that's not.
There are some dodgy examples knocking around.
Like Usain Bolt.
Yeah, like Usain Bolt.
Are there any good examples?
Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle, Diamond Light.
1987, yeah. Well, Hoddle was definitely a better singer than Waddle, that's for sure, if you remember the videos, anything to go by. Are there any good examples? Terry Venables never actually released a song, but he was a bit of a crooner.
Yes, he was a crooner.
Yeah, Escape to Victory.
Yeah, that's right.
Where footballers are acting.
Yeah. I know.
Not great.
Tell you what, I was watching the King Richard movie. About Serena Williams and Venus Williams' father, and quite apart from the fact that Will Smith is brilliant in it. I mean, he is brilliant. He deserves the Oscar, and it's a wonderful story. The kids who play Venus and Serena on the film, they're so brilliant at tennis. For heaven's sake, let alone acting.
I know. I remember I think it was someone like Tony Slattery who said years ago about actors playing the role of footballers, and he said they don't look like footballers, they're just like actors. But it sounds like they've surpassed themselves.
Oh, they have. It's absolutely. You haven't seen it yet?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I love it. They've done
brilliant?
Really well, and I'm like, they must have trained like to get the whole understanding of tennis and how it works. I thought that film was incredible.
Yeah.
That's why it was a shame Will Smith did what
spoiled
he did.
his Oscar.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch that.
It is so worth watching. It is absolutely brilliant. And of course, the other link between sports stars and celebrities is product endorsement. And Kate Moss is now endorsing. Well, what are they calling her? The design
creative director of Diet Coke.
Director, for heaven's sake, of Diet Coke.
Yeah. She once famously said nothing tastes as good as skinny. So I really find this match a bit.
Was she talking about milk?
Oh gosh, no. When you nothing tastes as good.
Oh
as skinny.
right, I thought it was like skinny latte.
Oh,
no, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
Yes,
that's what
skinny
she
feels. She said
hugely
it
controversial.
in the 90s when it was all about the heroin chic and stuff.
So
like
I find
that.
it uncomfortable that she's embracing Diet Coke.
Yeah, and then obviously there was that scandal as well in the
the other sort of Coke.
Yeah, but she's been paid £5 million to be the creative director.
But I don't know. Apologies to our radio listeners. You'll have to look this photo out. But what is that photo saying to us? It's Kate Moss in a very peculiar pose with lots of red gloved hands, and she's caressing a can of Diet Coke as though she's making love to it or something. I mean, what the heck's going on there? And she's creative designer.
Creative director.
Director, sorry.
They're trying to make it quite...
You just demoted her. She's only going to get 3 million.
They're trying to make Diet Coke more fashionable. They've always in the past, they teamed up with Karl Lagerfeld, God bless his soul. He redesigned the Diet Coke brand, and then they also done something with Ben Stiller where he was in his Zoolander character. So they're trying to make it more stylish and more hip for younger people as they celebrate their 40th anniversary.
When was it not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everyone has
actually.
always drunk Diet Coke. Well, I was in Tesco the other day. I was looking at loads of Coke on the aisle that I was looking at, that I was in, and I remember thinking, I wonder if we've reached a point where Diet Coke is outselling normal fat Coke.
Yeah. It must be,
I think so. Probably so.
Everyone's always worried about their weight, and Diet Coke, you know, when people are going on diets, instantly they drop the full fat Coke and go for Diet Coke. But I don't know if they needed Kate Moss to revive the brand. But, you know, the thing is, as I always say, it's got people talking, you know? So all of a sudden now, when you think Diet Coke, and she's going to be doing quite a bit over the next year with fashion houses and Diet Coke. So this is only the first bit.
Overboard. What's on the tennis this afternoon?
Oh, fantastic. We've had a brilliant weekend. Well, brilliant weekend in store. I mean, the attendance has been quite low on the outside courts. The centre courts have been selling out pretty well, but the Press Association did some interviews with punters yesterday, and they asked them why they felt that fewer people were coming. And there were three things really mentioned, well, the main two being the cost of living crisis, of course, well, the pandemic, people are still a bit nervous about travelling, and the international community isn't quite engaged with it because Federer's not there. Federer's a huge commercial draw. He's having a knee operation. You know, he's got... Sorry, go on, Stefan.
No.
Well, he's another huge celebrity star, isn't he?
What is it about Federer, though?
He's just got this... He transcends his sport. It's an overused word, transcends, but he genuinely does. You know.
Is it just because he's really good? Because I think the point you're making, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that he's not the most massively charismatic.
No.
He's kind of all right.
I
think he's likeable, but he's not. Is
he's
that
never
right?
appealed to me, personally.
Oh, no,
I've always been
like those ground strokes.
He looks brilliant. He's got this gorgeous wife. He's got 2 sets of twins. I mean, he couldn't be more picture perfect.
Also, it's just the way he plays the game. I mean, it's something...
Well, that is
that's it. But I think so. He ticks so many different boxes, and he obviously has an impact on the bottom line. People aren't going to take the risk, and obviously, people earlier on when they were probably buying tickets a few weeks ago, they were all buying tickets in advance online. They weren't sure if Djokovic was going to be there. Nadal doesn't tend to take it that seriously in the last few years because the competition's been so strong, although he's still in the tournament. He's involved today, actually. But yeah, the British story is incredible. We've got 2 genuine, or at least 1 genuine hope in the men's, 2 in the women's as well.
Yeah, 2 in the women's.
And so, yeah,
Kate... Round of 16 today?
That's right, we're in the 4th round. So middle Saturday. So they're hoping, the organisers are hoping that drop-off they've seen on the ground passes this week, that will try to swell a little bit this weekend because of the British interest, which we weren't expecting. At the start of the week, we thought the British hopes were going to come from Murray, which was, myself included, it was a bit much to expect somebody who's been that beset with injuries in recent years to suddenly go to the quarterfinals at Wimbledon. He was out, obviously, on Wednesday time. We obviously saw Emma Raducanu struggling early on, but the other 4, I can't remember a time we've had 4 hopes, two in either side of the draw. Cam Norrie's an interesting one. I mean, he grew up in New Zealand, and his mum and dad came over yesterday, and they were able to see him play. They'd not really seen him properly in 2 years because of the pandemic, and there he is in the 4th round. But most of them are like... I mean, Liam Brodie, who's from Stockport, he's got a tie today against Alex de Minaur. This is interesting because Alex de Minaur is Katie Bolter. It's Katie Bolter's boyfriend.
Yeah.
So Katie Bolter's
she's
the
our
other
new
British
hope.
hope. Yes. So she's 25. Heather Watson's 30. She's still involved.
Heather Watson 30?
She's 30. Breakthrough year 2012. These are all. These got hope. Everyone's got hope. You know, I mean, these are not new out of the block. New out of the blocks. These are not breakthrough acts. Cameron Norrie 26, Liam Brodie 28, Heather Watson 30. Katie Bolter, 25. When you consider Boris Becker in the mid-80s was winning titles at 17, and Nadal was winning titles at 17, Federer won his first one at about 2021. So we're seeing tennis players, we discussed it briefly, Stephanie, didn't we, outside, they're beginning to go longer into their career.
More mature
I think Serena's had her day, because every time she gets back on that court, I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself? Because I can tell for Serena Williams, it's more than the money. She just loves the game, but her performance has just been going down.
Yeah, they have, but you can pick it up, and the grass is very difficult as well. It's a very quick surface. It's not easy to adjust to when you've been out for a period of time. We look at Federer, for example. Federer didn't win anything. Didn't win any slams between 2012 and 2017. Then he rattles off 3 from nowhere, 2 Australians and a Wimbledon. Fantastic. Well done to him. We saw Pete Sampras at the
end of his career, he had 13, he won 14 in total, I think it was, but his 13th was after a 2 or 3 year gap between his last Wimbledon, and then he won the US Open in 2002. So sometimes have a little bit of a hiatus and then come back big before calling it a day. I wouldn't rule out Serena Williams. I think it would be very unwise.
Don't think you could rule anything out.
No, she's been written off. Don't forget, she's been written off many times already.
Tell us about the lewd behaviour that's got an actor into trouble.
Gosh. So this is literally a case of life imitating art. So Disney recently, they've picked up the rights to do the reboot of Full Monty. And Hugo Spears, who played Guy in it, most people might be aware of him or not, he's been sacked from the reboot because he was in the nude. He had been warned by producers to stop walking around naked in his trailer. But what happened is that he tried to entice a showrunner into his trailer while naked. So now he's been sacked from the reboot. He's on the front pages of The Sun today. And
Full Monty Hugo fired for doing Full Monty.
Yeah, and he denies any of the allegations that this runner has made. But, you know, at the moment, Disney take such allegations quite seriously, so he won't be appearing in it. But it's such a, you know, it's a shame.
I wonder what the script is, a reboot of the Full
So
Monty.
basically now it's like almost like 20 years later, and all of them have like grandkids and they've got children.
25 years, it was 97, I think.
And they're dealing with the cost of living crisis, like all of us. So it's showing them how difficult it's for them to make ends meet, and so obviously they're going to get back to stripping again.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it picks up on it, but it's unfortunate for him. He denies it. He says, what actor doesn't walk naked in their trailer? But it must be...
whether you have the curtains open or something.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable if you're trying to get a woman in her 20s to come in your trailer when you're butt naked.
Yeah, no, it's not a good look, as they say. It's not the right way to behave.
No, so they will be one man down.
I didn't think it was that great to look when they did it in 1997, to be honest with you.
No.
I liked him. I thought he was quite
It would be worth watching a reboot of that. And it sounds like a good script, but obviously he won't be in it. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's lovely to see you both. I'm planning a lovely afternoon in front of the telly.
Ooh.
Watching Wimbledon?
Watching Wimbledon.
Yes.
Oh, the big telly, you mentioned it, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm going to
very
I'm going
big
to visit my friend, and she's got one of those enormous televisions. You know, dominates the entire room, so I should be watching it. It'll be like being on court, But thank you so much. Lovely to see you, and we'll do this all again tomorrow.
Indeed. Stand by for Esther and Philip. They're here.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. This weekend promises more showers, some sunny spells, but if you're after calmer, drier, brighter, warmer weather, well, next week looks reasonably promising. This weather chart, though, doesn't look promising if you're after fine weather. Low pressure sitting over the UK. This weather front slowly tracking from west to east. It brought some fairly heavy downpours through the night and is still providing some rain across from Yorkshire down through to the Midlands, South East Wales and South West England. Slowly working eastwards, but much of East Anglia and the South East will be dry for most of today. Further north and west from that weather front, it's a case of seeing the showers developing, some heavy ones, some slow-moving ones, staying fairly wet across the Highlands of Scotland for most of the day. Quite a cool day here as well, and generally elsewhere, even when the sun's out, only high teens, low 20s, but perhaps up to 23, maybe 24 with some sunny spells across the southeast. There will be some showers moving in here through the evening time. Elsewhere, the showers do tend to fade this evening, and it'll turn fairly cool with largely clear skies. We'll keep cloud and showers coming into the northwest of Scotland and across Northern Ireland. But for many, we'll start with clear spells on Sunday morning. Temperatures, well, maybe holding up in the teens in towns and cities, but certainly rural areas will be down into single digits on Sunday morning. But there will be sunshine over the Midlands, eastern England, eastern Scotland. More cloud further west with a few showers here and there. But it's as we go through the day, the sun gets to work, the temperatures rise, that the showers start to develop once more, particularly over the Midlands and especially northeast England and eastern Scotland. Some pretty heavy downpours on Sunday afternoon. At the same time, further west, not many showers on Sunday afternoon. And certainly the southwest, South Wales, mostly dry and bright through the day with temperatures maybe getting to the low 20s. And there's more of that to come. There will be a few showers on Monday and Tuesday across parts of western Scotland, but for many it's looking largely dry into next week, and also signs, certainly the south, of it turning warmer.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest,
and civilised conversation.
We are not